Okay, I was I was hoping for the Neil deGrasse intro, and I don't want to play the other one yet, so we'll just might play that in a sec. But that's okay. That's okay. People will be going, "Oh, so you're back. Where have you guys been?" And it's a damn good question. Um, Welcome to the podcast, which hasn't been on for a little while. An atheist, a believer, and a pastor walk into a bar. So the question tonight we're talking about is, why do some Christians tell us we should believe just because? What would be gained by us declaring that God is real, even if we don't believe it, just to make someone happy? G'day and welcome to this episode. Oh, that's very strange. My phone should not be doing that because it is my phone that I'm using. So just give us a sec. It's going to... It's probably my wife, and she doesn't realize that we're doing the podcast tonight. Anyway, welcome to this episode of An Atheist, a Believer, and a Pastor Walk Into a Bar. I'm your host, Peter Rowe. Thanks for your company on this Wednesday night, the 26th of March, 2025, which means it's been exactly 1 month, believe it or not, since the last time we presented this podcast on the 26th of February. There's lots of reasons why we haven't been doing it, but needless to say, the busyness of life sometimes gets in the way, as we are all aware of. People doing what they have to do. We are no different. Kids and families and work and all sorts of stuff. So here we are with the light version of this podcast with just me and Luke. Just gone 8 o'clock Australian Western Standard Time, broadcasting from Perth, Western Australia, live on YouTube. Would love you to be a part of it tonight if you can. G'day, Luke. How are you, mate?
I'm well, mate. I'm glad to be back. It's it's been a strange absence, and in fact, with Richie's absence, because I was away sort of towards the end of last year, I worked it out. It's been probably 3 months since I've been on a podcast on at the same time as Rich. So wild. Yeah, us Christians, mate, we're very disorganized. For all this talk about organized religion, we're pretty rubbish at the moment. We're not representing that side of it.
Careful what you're saying, because I am far from being a Christian. So just you claim that yourself. Never mind about me.
I'm talking about me and Rich.
Oh, good. Well, fewer Christians, the better, I reckon.
Yeah.
Anyway, so look, moving along, we're talking about Pascal's wager tonight, among a few other things. I've got a clip I want to play that I stumbled upon an American journalist kind of losing his shit over Christians and wanting to be left alone. So we might get to that if we can. We're talking about Pascal's wager. If you're unaware of what exactly that is, we have talked about it a little bit. It's a philosophical argument formulated by Mr. Blaise Pascal that suggests believing in God is a rational choice, even if one doesn't have strong evidence, because the potential reward, eternal happiness, outweighs the potential cost, which is finite inconveniences. So here's a more detailed breakdown of Pascal's wager and the different aspects of it. We talk about the core argument, because Pascal argues that since we can't definitively know whether God exists or not, we must wager one way or the other. 2 bob each way, as we say in Australia, have a bet. The wager is that if God exists and you believe, you gain eternal happiness. If God exists and you don't believe, you suffer eternal damnation. If God doesn't exist and you believe, you'd lose nothing. And if God doesn't exist and you don't believe, you gain nothing. All right. There's also the rational choice. Pascal suggests that even given the potential for infinite gain or loss, it's rational to wager on God's existence by believing living a religious life as the potential reward, eternal happiness, is infinitely greater than the potential cost, finite inconveniences of religious living. Among the criticisms are that the argument is too simplistic, assuming that there's only one God and that belief is a matter of free choice, which is not always the case. Worth saying that Pascal was just putting an argument forward which some people can adopt or not, depending how that makes you feel. I don't see the point in it at all, because you're not fooling anyone. It can make you feel better if you want to trick yourself into believing that there is a God and therefore you're going to have eternal life and stuff like that. But you're certainly not fooling if there is a God by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm not sure really what the point is, but it's very interesting. There's also the pragmatic argument, meaning it's designed to motivate belief rather than provide evidence for the existence of God, which is what we talk about a lot on this podcast. Pascal's wager and decision theory. I'm just going to double check, make sure that I'm still being heard. Luke has disappeared, but now he seems to be back. I'll continue on for a sec, Luke. Are you good? Can you hear me? Is everything still all right? We're just for those tuned
browser
in.
It went forwards for some reason. So, but I heard all of that at backstage. I could hear it. So I'm
Wow.
with you.
Okay, that's good. Anyway, where was I? Another objection is that Pascal's wager assumes that we can simply choose to believe something which is not necessarily the case. Pascal's wager and the atheist's wager, a counter argument, suggests that even if God doesn't exist, living a good life is still worthwhile, and that believing in God might even be harmful. So it's not unique certainly to Pascal. I think he's probably one of the people who modernized it and made it more aware of the potential options available to those people in thinking, well, just have a bet each way. What do you got to lose? Well, it doesn't get you into heaven or hell based on that, of course, which is part of the problems with Pascal's wager. But it's kind of interesting, isn't it, Luke? It's an interesting idea that some people do adapt and adopt.
Yes, it's actually quite a fascinating one because I think it's used in so many different ways. I've seen this used in apologetics. So people that are their goal to try and convince people that their Christianity is true, or actually more likely that their version, their brand, their interpretation of things are true. And so often it's kind of used in that as a way to try to, to try to shoehorn someone into believing it because here's a rational way to think about it. Obviously, it's not rational, and we will have to unpack that a little bit. But
we're not getting you very clear at the moment, Luke. You're buffering and your signal's really messed up, so we're not really hearing everything that you're saying. It must be your Wi-Fi signal at the moment or something. It's not the audio. Audio is working fine, but just the camera. Okay. Yeah, just you're freezing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was crystal clear when we started, but now it's gone to shit.
Okay, let me try. Right, see if that's any better.
No, not yet.
Is it still starting?
It's still not hearing you. Just while you hang on, it's starting to clear up a little bit. Just to mention too, we do have Kenk from last time. So I take it the Kenk has been actually, it's not pronounced Kenk. I can't remember what it is, but it's spelled C-E-N-K. It's been a month. God love him if he's been tuning in all this time to try and catch up with us, and it's not been by design to not be available and to let people down who have been tuning in. But your image and everything's still frozen and messy. You must be connected to Jason somehow, because this is fairly typical of Jace.
Let me try something.
Yeah, go on. Howdy, I think I'm a regular at this point. I think you are too, which is fabulous. We've had some interesting discussions. We share many historical similarities too, you and I, with the lives that we have had and where we've ended up, which is certainly not unique by any stretch of the imagination. It's a typical and common relationship with people who become Christians, sort of, not born necessarily into it, but then become Christians, get sold on that, and then find themselves on the outer, not making it work and not being able to pull the whole thing together, and not buying the whole thing. Jenk, that's right. Sorry, I'm going to write that down here, because otherwise I'm just going to keep calling you Call John, which is not very flattering. And you're still frozen, Luke, which is strange, because I think we had about 38 degrees Celsius today. So I'm not sure what your issue is at this point. But Jenk, thanks so much for being a part. Any interesting developments in your life over the last month? I know we've been talking sometimes about the difficulty, particularly in your country, how it's not often accepted, and Eve was framed, who I've since discovered, whose name is Promise, by the way. That's her real name, but Eve was framed as, constantly talking about the abuse and the attacks on her, having the audacity to become an atheist after spending the same amount of time that I have, and similar to you, 25 years as a believer. Luke's just changed.
How's that?
That's worse. I've got two. I'm just going to remove one and put that one in. Why is that? Yeah, I don't know what the problem is, mate. It's probably because the machinery hasn't been used for a month. It's got all dust in it. It's not working very well. But yeah, you never had the problem. Yeah, go for it, mate. That's cool. Jenk and I will just sit here. And as I was saying about Eve was framed, is still getting abused. She's brave. I've got to tell you that. She's constantly on Facebook talking about her lack of belief and copying the abuse. I'm not sure I would subscribe to that kind of rubbish. And it's hilarious, because all the people who are abusing her are waving the Christian flag. And it just goes to show the difference in various countries, where you can see people who claim to be Christian living clearly a life based upon the teachings of Christ, and counter to that. And I hate to point fingers at a country, but I think America has been so obsessed with religion over such a great period of time that they really have lost the basic message, which of course nationalism has just absolutely nailed that to something so disconnected and unrelated to the character of Christ, and has culminated brilliantly in the most bizarre appointment of someone clearly who should not be the president of anything, who is clearly a deranged, obsessed, narcissistic maniac. That's okay to a point, until you find out that he has the power and authority to do some really scary stuff. And I think we're about to perhaps find out in the next 6 to 12 months just how unhinged the man is, if he hasn't already done that. And the amount of people, I hear Bruce Springsteen, Robert De Niro have moved to Canada to get away from the country that they no longer love. It's amazing, isn't it, how one nut can cause such division in a country. And so many people now that voted for him are just going off their faces going, why did we do that? We got conned. But they're already talking about the possibility of he becoming president for his third term in 2028, which is scary in itself. Scary in itself. Jega said, nothing new really. I've been seeing a rise in Theo Bros. What is, let me just enlarge that. I can hardly read it. What is Theo Bros? It's obviously an abbreviation of something which I'm not picking up on. Just tell us what that is, if you could, please. might have been something we were talking about before, but we do speak a different language between our countries, so it just might need a bit of a clarification on that for me, if you don't mind. Terror's right-wing fundamental. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I remember we talked about that before. It's not a term that is commonly used in Australia. Many things, of course, that we don't share with our American counterparts, and it's only going to come even more. All my life, I've understood the connection and the clarity with the relationship with America, which also no longer exists. Hi, I'm in the podcast. Yeah, so you did, and everyone enjoyed the phone call ringing on air. So my wife has just come in; she's been working late, so I might have to just give me a sec. I'm just gonna jump up and close some doors and get some of the animals out. Hang on a sec.
It sometimes just drops
out. Okay. All
right. Can you get me?
Yeah, got you loud and clear, nice and clear. Everything's good.
Smooth?
Smooth as a proverbial baby's bum.
I like Jenk's comment about he got very Shakespearean. Deny thy Rowie and refuse thy podcast. It's brilliant.
With an emphasis on masculinity, just curious, as left-leaning Australians, is there anything about Trump that you do like? I'll answer that in a second. Luke, wherefore art thou, Luke? Deny those, Rowie, and refuse thy podcast. That's the worst. That's the worst adaptation of Shakespeare I think I've ever seen. Jenk, hang your head in shame.
Romeo and Luciette.
As a left-leaning Australian, that's interesting that you see us as being left-leaning Australian.
I'm left-leaning.
Yeah,
I reckon you are too. Just
well, I've never. Oh, your screen just went beautifully clear. What happened? I've never seen myself as being. I know people like to put people in boxes and determine whether you're a leftist or you're a righty or whatever. I've never really subscribed to. I'm not a big person on labels because I'm very much a believer in, and we're talking about Japanese words earlier. I love the idea that nothing's all good and nothing's all evil. There's just percentages of the different things that make up the beautiful uniting of the Japanese symbol, which I'm trying to think of it. What is it called?
Yin and yang.
Yeah, yin and yang. I love that. I think if you say I'm a lefty, then it's impossible for you to have any affiliation or appreciation for the right, and vice versa. So anyway, that's by the by. Jink sees us as a left-leaning Australian. Anything about Trump that you do like? For the first time in my life, Jink, I can honestly say, hand on heart, that I cannot think of one single solitary thing about that man that is in any way encouraging, beneficial, helpful, showing any signs of care or love. I think he is the most self-obsessed person, and there's plenty of them around. They're just not in positions of power that you can analyze them. So there are people like Trump's not unique, but he is unique for a leader. Well, apart from Adolf Hitler, who was also equally as self-obsessed, but we didn't know as much about him as we did Trump because everything is so out there, and Hitler was very one-dimensional as far as his plan of attack on the world, whereas Trump, we were still trying to wrap our heads around what he is, how this movie could end, how do we play out the film with Trump as the main actor, and what impact does it have on our lives? So I don't think there's anything. I think he's one of the few people in the history of humans that I've witnessed that I cannot think of one single solitary thing about him that is good. Now, I'm talking about Trump, the politician. We don't see him as a father. We don't see him as a husband per se. I'm seeing him as a person representing people, and he seems completely incapable of having passion or heart for someone. A part of that is because he's not very smart. He is still telling people that China is going to pay for the tariffs. Any economist in the world will tell you that is just complete and utter bullshit. When they import cars from China into America, China aren't paying the tariffs. The people who buy the cars, an $80,000 Ute before is now $90,000 roughly, as an example, because the dealers and the importers are the ones who have to pay the tariffs. This is how stupid the man is. He's punishing his own people, thinking that he's getting money from China. The same stupidity that he applied to getting Mexico to build a wall, which never happened. It never was going to happen. But people are gullible, and they like to believe that someone who's in power must be telling the truth and must be saying what's right because they're smart and they're powerful, and they didn't just get there by accident. That's exactly how Donald Trump got there. Yeah, of course, privilege, absolutely. He's one of the worst business people in history. He's been sued and in debt so many times over his practices.
Although I would argue one of the best marketers in history.
Oh,
He has to be to market his brand himself. Like you said, everything you've said is 100% spot on. And even with all the tariffs, with the cost of living, with everything, right? He's somehow still got people to believe that it's a good thing, that they're going to be better off, that he's on their side. It's insane. And like you said, we're very unsuccessful businessmen when you look at it statistically, and you look at the actual, his track record, and yet has somehow convinced the world that he's the greatest businessman that ever lived, and is doing the same thing as a politician. That's about the only thing that I can think of that I'm almost in awe of his ability to do so. But I think it's less about his ability to do that and more about what it is that we as people are willing to compromise with. Do you know what I mean? Like it's almost like we want. Yeah. I think Trump's a mirror. I think he normalizes the shadows of us, that the parts of us. Yeah, in theology you'd call it sin or the Satan or whatever, like those the dark parts of humanity that are not good, objectively are not good, and yet they feel good. There's something that we think we want revenge until you actually get it and you realize that it doesn't do anything and it's not helpful, and it's
be careful what you wish for.
Exactly, right? All of that sort of stuff. And yet, but he normalizes getting revenge. He'll normalize saying these things. He normalizes exclusion and hatred, normalizes power grabbing, all of this stuff that in the deep recesses of our souls, sometimes we want to participate in, or we want to do, there's those calls, those temptations. And yet, because the president of the United States is doing it and doing it openly, it becomes normal, and it almost is a permission slip for us to start to behave in that way. And that goes back to what Cenk was saying around the rise of theobros, that right-wing fundamentalism online. And we've seen that across the board with toxic masculinity, very misogynistic stuff, all sorts of things that you wouldn't get away with in the past, because rightly we'd moved past them, and yet now it's come back with a flurry because there's this permissive. It's like a permission slip from the leader of the free world to say it's okay to act this way. In fact, it's encouraged. Right. In fact, it's the only way to get things done, and this is and so now you've got a whole bunch of people, and that's where we see January 6th and the insurrection. It's actually very scary. That's the scariest thing for me, the permissiveness, the normalization of this sort of behavior.
Yeah, well, it is scary, and I wouldn't mind if he was able to achieve that which he should on behalf of the American people. I don't care. He can be a complete dick. He can play golf and not be at work. He can do whatever he likes. That's got nothing to do with who he is as a person. It's purely about his inability to care about people, which is, to me, and I'm not suggesting that all presidents were great for that, but I think what Cenk was talking about, is there anything that we like about Trump? And you mentioned something about something he was very good at. Now, there are things he's very good at. Manipulation is one of them. Selling bullshit to people successfully. He's very good at that. They're not things I like. They're things that I can acknowledge he can do. He can do them. That doesn't mean to say I have to like him and like the way he does what he does. And the most staggering, and I'd like to get Cenk's feedback on this too, the most staggering thing that us Aussies feel, and now most Americans feel, is how sad it is for him to be able to con people into believing he's never done anything for people. Let's go back, wind the clock back to how he became famous in the first place. He was, inherited all that money from his father, and he was his main public awareness thing was, of course, that he was a host of what was the name of the stupid show?
The Apprentice.
The Apprentice. That's and you had to watch him on that to see what a horrible person he was to people. No shame about abusing and belittling people. It's what he's so good at. And he was clever enough, incredibly clever, incredibly great marketer, as you said, to be able to con people based upon, I think, the fact that he was just offering something different and people didn't care what was it different about the fact it's different. They've listened to bullshit from politicians, as we all have done, because no politicians that I've seen in the world actually serve people as they should. No. It's always about them and what they can get out of it. And Jenk, just in case you don't know much about Australian politicians, it's no different. Well, it is a little bit different, and it has been a lot better. But at the end of the day, you can pretty much tar all politicians with the same brush. If they are good people and honest people and get into politics, they're not very good and very honest for very long. And they either toe the line, do what they have to, become corrupt and bent and deceitful and accept money from lobbyists to put in and apply the most ridiculous self-serving laws and rules and stuff. I have very little respect for politicians, period.
And they're set up to fail from the get-go. Like you said, you cannot accept $150 million or whatever the amount was from the NRA to fund your campaign. And that's not just Trump. That's every presidential candidate of the last 50 years. You can't accept that and then get in. Well, I mean, you can. You absolutely can. But are we surprised that this doesn't happen? Accept all of that money, and then once they get in, there's 1,000 more school shootings, and everyone's crying out for gun reform, and they're going, well, my hands are tied because I've just accepted $150 million from the NRA, and there's people that are wielding power. There are people that make people, and they're compromised. The same with here. We got fracking and all sorts of unethical mining practices that are destroying the parts of the environment. Yes, good for the economy and things like that. And it's not like outlaw all mining, but it's when you're accepting a whole bunch of money from these different mining organizations, what are we going to expect them to turn around and then outlaw a whole bunch of projects that are going to damage the environment? But it's like you compromise from the get-go. And that's what you're talking about with politicians. It's very hard.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get into the black or white. This is what gets me with politics. It's right or left, red or blue, donkey or elephant, liberal or Labor. It's literally, it's like we're playing with two. And therefore, if there's only two options, it's then one's good and one's bad. But it's not. They're both bad, but they both have good elements to it. It's a spectrum. And
do you think that they only do what they do in their job as a politician because they don't believe two parts of the question? They don't believe they need to be honest and straight in order to be as successful as they are now? Or part two of the question is, do you think that they do it because they just don't know any difference? They've been in politics for so long that they are inbred to believe that being bent or doing underhanded stuff or compromising the benefit for people to serve lobbyists and what they do and the money that they give. Do you think that they just automatically become potentially crooked because they don't think politics is something can work by being straight?
I think there's very, very, very few politicians who are crooked in the sense of that cartoonish representation we'll see in Hollywood movies where there's someone who's obviously crooked and they're obviously trying to get, push their own agenda. Strangely enough, Trump seems to tick some of those boxes where he's just unapologetically pursues his own agenda. But I think the majority of them, it's not necessarily that, although a lot of the behavior is crooked. It just comes down to this idea of, this is just how politics is done. This is just what happens in this environment. And this happens not just in politics. We've seen this in Wall Street, for example, in financial services, where it just, like Wolf of Wall Street is the extreme of that, where a culture develops around an environment and it just becomes, this is how business gets done. This is just how this operates. And I think that's very deeply embedded in politics. This is just how, the ideals of democracy, the ideals of, a bunch of guys sitting around and trying to work out what government should look like for the people, with the Constitution and with George Washington and whatnot. I think a lot of that gets lost because it's been stripped away over so many years that it just becomes, well, if you're going to operate in this space, this is what we do. We've got to shake hands. We've got to kiss babies. We've got to make promises that we know we cannot keep or we aren't going to keep. And then we'll excuse ourselves and we kind of just say it's a white lie because we're going to actually do all these other things that are going to be better for those people. So yes, we're not going to follow through on this bit, but we're still going to give them benefit from this. So it's like you just justify all of this stuff. And I think that just becomes the norm. So from the minute you enter that, and most politicians, I would imagine, would enter very idealistic, wanting to make a change, wanting to be that, seeing all the stuff that we see. But then you get into that environment and it's very hard. And I've been in many environments. I've been in financial services. I've been in church. I've been in all sorts where it's intoxicating. It's overwhelming, the culture of some environments. And you've got all of these voices of people that you respect and that are very successful and they are what you want to be in this space, telling you, no, this is how things are done. Then that's just how things get done and you just justify it and you keep moving forward. It's really hard. But I was going to say to bring up Cenk's comments because these are really good.
A good chunk of the American electorate knows all of Trump's flaws. Absolutely. I agree and understand with that. It's just that the elites have ignored and looked down the working class in this country so much that they are willing to throw, the dynamite's another part of dynamite under the foundation and see what happens. Just as a quick side issue, is there only a certain amount of words that can be written on this comment before you have to change? Is that why I've seen that a couple of times? Is there a limit on amounts of words you can actually use on a comment that you have to put in another page or not?
Probably.
Don't know? Yeah, okay. Dynamite under the foundation, see what happens. Yeah.
On the money.
It's so difficult being... Well, it's both difficult and good because we can tend to sort of look at what's happening in America through different lens than what people who are actually feeling it firsthand. We do understand there are a lot of people who know Trump's flaws, but there was what was the thing I saw today about? Some English professor was saying Trump has now turned the Democrat Party into a cult. It no longer represents, and it's
the Republican.
Republican. Sorry, it represents everything that we've talked about before that makes up a cult, with the main reason being a figurehead who borderline dictator, which he clearly is, if not already quickly becoming. And it has become a cult. It doesn't stand anywhere near what it used to be in the past. He has managed to change it completely, almost overnight, probably never to be able to return to its former self. What is it? And if it's not a political party, worthy of being called that, but it is a cult, then what do the other political parties, well, how do they position themselves to be able to tackle, and who do they use to represent a person who is seen as being someone better than Trump if Trump's not even representing a political party, and it's just become such cult focused. Who can stop him? I mean, Kamala Harris is not clearly not going to become the next president of the United States. I would imagine he's destroyed her and will destroy anyone else that comes along. It's yeah. This isn't. If you've just joined us, we're talking about Pascal's wager for tonight, and there's a strange and distorted, strange kind of link that does tie these issues very loosely together. In fact, the woman that I was going to play tonight, because Cenk uses the profile picture of a guy, as I said, I've watched quite a bit, and he's with they have a podcast, or I don't know whether it's a podcast, how the format works, but of a woman that does a lot of the broadcasting with him, and she's actually the woman that I saw today, and I might play that a little bit later, sort of we can tie it in again with what we've been talking about. 250 character limit. Okay, I thought that must have been the case. Not many people go past it, but the conversations with Cenk, I think, are worthy of that. So thanks, appreciate that.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
The Democrats refused to enforce the law and keep the people safe, so it's no wonder an authoritarian rose to. Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, it's a perfect storm, isn't it? You know, you got a maniac willing to do it, and the people who are willing to hand over the power and say, "Off you go, mate." We can live with that. Not a problem at all. Beautiful. Which is why it happened. It's the only way it could possibly have happened. Sorry, didn't mean to hijack the conversation. No, not at all.
Didn't hijack it. You started a good one. This is great.
We chucked this together at a late notice. It wasn't necessarily even going to be a podcast tonight. And I've been sitting on this, delving deeper into Pascal's wager a little bit deeper. And I thought, and Luke said, "Are we doing tonight?" I went, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about that." It was never going to be only about that, which is why I had this backup with this particular woman, which I think you will, if you're using that dude's, it says, I don't know why you're using his face as a portrait. Obviously, that's not you, or is it? Is that the real Cenk? Would the real Cenk please stand up? And why do you use his face? And who is he? And
he's trying not to show us up. That's what it is. He's being respectful. He's probably a devastatingly handsome bloke, and he's thought, I don't want to steal the attention away from these two. It's the only explanation.
Is it? Okay, I can live with that. He certainly is our most persistent follower. I can't believe we can just jump up a month after we've been absent, and like he's still there. He's probably been checking every week, which is fantastic devotion. Really appreciate it, mate. It means a lot to us to be able to just bugger off for a month and then sort of come back. This is normally my account I troll with. Yeah, okay. I figured that was what you were. But I'm not asking you to expose who you really are. Troll away, my friend. Ah, dear.
We like our anonymity as well. This is that's why we chuck our mugs up here and talk shit. But you know what? It's not hijacking, because I think this is such a weird. It's a weird time to be alive. Yeah, and I think this stuff needs to be spoken about. And there's no shortage of people speaking about it. What blows me away is there was no shortage of people speaking about this stuff in the last 4 years. Even in the election leading up to this. And just going back, I know we will get on to Pascal's wager in a sec, but just going back to, I think Cenk hit the nail on the head with when he was talking about the dynamite under the foundation. It was ripe. It was ready to just That was the appeal of Trump in 2016. I never got on board the Trump train, but I certainly could understand it better prior to his first election. You've got a maverick coming in here, identifying that there's red tape and corruption and all the sort of stuff that we talk about. Yeah, the elites, the deep state is what he would call it. Yeah, and again, we like a common enemy, and Trump gives us a common enemy. Yeah, he'll say it's this is the enemy, this, and so all of this stuff. And I think people were ready to go, yeah. And like you hit it beautifully before, Rowie, talking about we, especially as Aussies, we don't care that he's playing golf and doing this sort of stuff. We actually love a larrikin and we love an underdog. Yeah, that's the perfect storm to have.
That's a part of his appeal to us.
Well, that's right.
First saw him, that
whole sense of I love someone who can color outside the lines. I color outside the lines. You want someone like that. You want someone who's going to shake stuff up, do things differently. All of that is great, and I could see the appeal when he came in, and he certainly did that and then some, but then in very harmful ways, not just politically leaning, but in all sorts of areas. And then to be re-elected, that's what I struggle with, because I think that whole appeal, the hope of this maverick who's going to come in, shake things up for the better, you can't still have that vision after someone's just accused an election of being stolen and instigated a insurrection on the Capitol and all this sort of stuff. You just go, oh wow, but yet he was voted in again. So I don't really know what to make of all of that. But I agree with Cenk that, it's not like the Democrats were the perfect alternative. There's plenty wrong in that administration as well. And maybe there was that perfect storm, that recipe for this to happen. But what's scary is what you were saying before about that third term. Any other time in history, you'd laugh that off and you'd say, well, good luck. You can't do that. But he probably can, and he probably will. It's just that, and that's scary, because what does that end up with? Kim Jong-il, that's how different are you to North Korea? That's literally a dictatorship at that point.
Yeah, well, on Pascal's wager, let's see what Cenk has to say about it in your time as a non-Christian, and then as a Christian, and then back now as an atheist. Do you know anyone who sits on the fence? Who there's a saying we have in Australia called 2 bob each way. A bob is 20 cents. So you put 2 bob each way. So you're covering your bets. That's what basically Pascal's wager is. That you got a foot in each thing, for want of another word. So did you ever consider that yourself? I mean, it's strange that it's actually such a big subject to talk about, because I don't know anyone who's ever lived a life or made a commitment to religion or atheism based upon, I'm just going to have a crack at this. I'm just going to believe in both, so I'm covered. I don't see any benefit other than feeling good. But it doesn't do anything to help prove or show any evidence of the existence of God. So what about you? Is it something that you are well...
What's interesting?
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's funny. Something just occurred to me as you were saying that. It's almost a position that could only come from someone within faith already. And Blaise Pascal was a Catholic, so he was already a believer. And interestingly, he didn't develop this idea of what's become known as Pascal's wager as an argument for God, which is what it ended up becoming used for. It was more of a philosophical musing on why it's an important question to wrestle with, I think. And that part of it I can get on board with, but I think it falls apart so quickly.
On so many levels.
on so many levels. It's there are so many presuppositions for it. It actually doesn't work. It's not as straightforward as it's posited to be. But you can't come from that. You almost have to have a belief in hell in order for that wager to even become a thing. So it can only be built from within that framework, which is why I think no one has come across that and thought, oh, that's why I'll believe. Yeah, although I think it's used, I don't think it's used very well in that respect. I think it's used heavily, even subconsciously, to keep people in line, to keep people in the faith, to keep people from questioning, within that faith framework. Yeah,
it's interesting though, Luke, that the existence of the discussion actually allows for that position to be in. So you got two choices. You're either a believer or you're not a believer, but there seems to be this grey area in between where there's somehow some benefit to the person to be able to think that there's a reason why it could be good for me to have two bob each way. So without it's the fact that religion in itself, because there is no, now if it was what I mean by that is if it was proven that God, okay, we've proved it, we've found a way, God's real, there's no debate, blah blah blah. There's no such thing as Pascal's wager. Pascal's wager
Correct.
can only exist with the lack of evidence for anything, which kind of shines a light in a way, and I don't know whether this was his original idea, but it shines a light on the fact that there isn't evidence and it's not provable, and you could probably apply a similar kind of Pascal's wager to other elements of things. Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, it's like kids believe in fairies and the parents don't. So you got they believe in fairies. We know that they're not real, and so you have this kind of, well, either way, I'm just going to believe in fairies because they make me feel good. They're lovely. I'll go and pretend to play with them in the garden. That is a similar kind of thing, isn't it? With a different subject.
Totally, 100%. I think, and that's. I had something there and I completely lost it. But it'll come back to me. But you're right. We see that it plays itself out in belief in Santa, belief in all sorts of stuff. If I believe, and it might be true, then great. If I keep believing, I'm going to keep getting presents. But if I don't, there's very little upside to not believing, and there's very little. There's a much bigger downside to putting your cards out on the table, all of that sort of stuff. So we see that definitely play out. It'll come back to me. Yeah, right. I'll interrupt when I think of it.
Okay. I was asking Jenk about Pascal's wager and whether it had seen incidences, if you like, of it. I did. My belief was in part a hedge against the fear of hell. Yes, that is probably the most. And I didn't read when I read about more into Pascal. I would have thought that would have been one of the most obvious reasons why, with the fear of hell. And somehow keeping yourself feeling. I do believe in. I do believe in heaven. I do believe in hell. Where you might not believe in either. To simply get rid of that anxiety and fear of hell. And I as a Christian of 25 years, I still have this nagging thing in the back of my mind that, in spite of the fact that I seemingly have zero belief that there is a God and therefore there's no heaven and there's no hell, I still have this nagging thing, such as the brainwashing power of being told all the time through that 25 years that heaven's real and hell is real. And it still scares the crap out of me when I think about it. Could it actually be real? Because if I'm willing to say, wouldn't it be great if heaven was real? Because then I get to see Mabel again. I get to see, we talked about dogs going to heaven. I get all that. If you're going to do that without any evidence of either, you must then also be able to do the same Pascal's thing or whatever and put to Bob about the fact that hell also exists. But you don't want to do that because it's terrifying and it's horrible and it's yucky. So let's not believe it's real. But it's still hard to get that out of your system when you've believed it for so long. It's easy to go, I hope heaven's real. Oh, shit, I'm into that because it's a beautiful thing. It's a lovely thing. So I understand why you did that. So when you say your belief was part a hedge against the fear of hell and death, how important was it? What role did it play in you actually making a decision to be a believer? Or was it just based upon that which we've been talking about, all the reasons why people, according to Pascal, sit on the fence and have two bob each way? Was that you? Because that's fascinating.
I would imagine, I'll wait for Jenk to reply, but I would imagine it would have played a great deal because that's the basis, that's the framework and the foundation of much of modern evangelism.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. It's fire insurance, it's I'm going to put the fear of hell into someone and then I'm going to tell someone they're going there, oh, but here's a way out and this is the way out. And so and then their entire faith is built on the foundations of that. And then we believe this dichotomy of heaven and hell. And we believe that if there is a heaven, then there has to be a hell, which that's a false dichotomy as well. That's not necessarily true. There could be a hell without a heaven. There could be a heaven without a hell. They're not this inextricably linked yin and yang where they have to balance each other out. That's not the biblical story. And it's interesting. Now, just I know Jenks just responded, but I'll just, now that I've remembered what I was going to say before, just while I think of it, what you're saying around how Pascal's wager actually shines a light on the unprovability or the lack of evidence for God, for example. And you're spot on. But I think it's important for us to remember that Pascal, we're talking 17th century, right? So that the emphasis today on proof, on evidence, this whole post-enlightenment push for that, it just wasn't there. It was perfectly acceptable to accept the mystery, to accept that there's no rational way, we cannot reason our way to, we cannot find proof, that there is no provable way for me to say God does exist or God doesn't exist. Therefore, there's got to be something else. Now, the modern understanding from many positions like yourself would be to say, if we can't have a proof for one way or the other, therefore I won't believe because I don't have the proof. But that wasn't really that wasn't the position they would take. It would just say, well, we just believe without it. There's that faith, there is that something, a reasoning through some other way. And that's actually sort of the genesis of Pascal's wager. He's actually saying, because we cannot have proof one way or the other, we need another way to think about this question. You can go either way. You can say God does exist or God doesn't exist. But here's the upside, here's the downside. It's built in a framework conditional on the belief of eternal conscious torment and hell and all sorts of stuff, which we'll unpack. I'll let you get back to Jenk. But it's interesting that wasn't really a thing, that we didn't have the evidence. It was more about, well, you don't need that to believe, but here's what we can use as a framework to think about it.
He did mention that as a slide on the evangelicals, but I mean, you got to go way back before they were damaging to the Catholics, are the ones that initiated the original reward and fear
Totally.
dogma, didn't they? I mean, they set it up for everyone. Just petrified the living crap out of the stuff that they went on with. innocent
and
people.
fear was the best thing. Look at the Crusades. That wasn't
Best
fear.
motivator.
That was death. Believe or die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes just die before we even have this conversation, because we're going to, this is us saving your tribe or whatever. That's a whole nother thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, Jenkins said that in talking about Pascal's wager led to the faith when he was a kid, heard about Christ dying on the cross and me going to hell for not believing in him. I was both scared and felt guilty. That is just so stereotypical, isn't it? Especially of a young mind when you said you were a kid. That's one of the things. We must do a podcast on that. The incredible, and I know as a Christian person, as a father, you're not a subscriber of that manipulation. You seem to be able to give the kids freedom to be able to question, make up their own mind. There's little to be gained by talking kids into believing something that it's probably impossible to make an adult valid decision based upon only what my parents have told me. I mean, that's fraught with danger. And this too, kids are so, I'm of the firm belief that I think that kids should not be taught anything while their minds are so open and so unable to determine the difference between truth and stories and stuff like that. I think that it's most kids who are Christians or Jews or whatever is because that's the house that they were brought up in. Why would you choose anything else? Why would I choose not to believe in it? Mum and dad do.
Exactly.
I believe anything mum and dad do. Why would I not believe what mum and dad do? It's rare, and I'm one of the few people who wasn't brought up in that environment. I probably remember going to a church maybe once or twice on a Sunday school when I was a little kid back in the 50s and 60s. But it was never part of any conversation in our house. It was never anything. And so for me, it was making a decision a long way down the track in my mid-30s, around there, I think, based upon all of the experiences of the world to make the decision about what I thought was right or wrong. That's not always the case. As Jen was saying, I mean, as a kid, the vision, the thought, to being able to imagine a Christ dying on the cross, and who is this guy? Why are they telling me he died for me? Wow, what happened that he died for me? What did I do? What did he do? Why did he do it? And there's a place called hell that I can go to if I don't abide by these.
And his love.
Hey.
Oh, and also his love, and he's your father.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It is just such wow. It's impossible to wrap my head around as a mature man, having gone to both. But for a kid,
yeah, I struggle. I wrestle with this a lot because I obviously talk to my kids. My kids are at Christian schools. I read the Bible with my kids. I do this sort of stuff, and yet I also am inherently aware of everything that we just said. But then I'm also aware of me putting my own stuff on them as well. Even if I believe it's right, even if I believe it's a more beautiful, inclusive, loving interpretation than some of this stuff, it's still my own journey, my own stuff. Even if it's good, I don't want to put that on them that they have to believe that. So I don't know if I get it right. I mean, I'm always speaking to them about ask the question, wrestle with it. What's truth? What's the story? What's the truth in a story? What is literal? What's not? Yeah. How do we is God like this? Is God not like this? And often what they're learning at school is contrary to the conversations that I'll be having with them, and that's confusing for them as well. Yeah, so it's been a big journey about explaining it's okay to have different understandings, different interpretations, different beliefs. I think I'm right, but I could be wrong. Yeah, we've got to question things. Don't take things on face value, and more trying to wrestle with stuff to get to the character of God rather than someone's interpretation, because a lot of the time these interpretations are very harmful. Like
it's a very adult concept, though, isn't it?
And that's exactly right. Everything I'm saying
is very adult, and
try to say that to a 7-year-old. You know,
have you opted with the possibility of just going, well, I don't need to talk to them about that because they aren't adult. They won't be able to understand what that means. What would happen if I didn't?
Yeah, I mean, I could, but then also, yeah, it's definitely an option. But then also, they're getting it at school. They're getting it at our church, our home church community. Sometimes I'm teaching it to the kids, and I'm very careful with what I teach and how I teach these stories. In fact, I use it as an opportunity to undo the harm of some of these stories when they're presented in ways that are not good. Like, hey, kids, here's another way to think about it. So it's hard to have them involved in all of that and then to not have the conversation. But then also I don't want to be hounding them about it either. So I am very, I let them come to me. I just am often reminding them, hey, got any questions? Yeah, it's not all right, it's Bible study time, let's go. It's more just, and it's really good. I think kids have it's funny, they have a more intuitive grasp on what's right and wrong. They've got a more intuitive grasp. And I think it always comes back, I think of Jesus when he says, is like, kids were worthless at that time. They were lower than women at that time. It was a real, they were nothing. They weren't even real people. And he's like, no. You need to learn from them. Like, they actually get it. They understand the kingdom. They understand me. They need to be here, sort of thing. And it was like, again, a subversive thing that he's doing. But I kind of, I think I understand that better now as a dad, because they do. Sometimes there's been moments where I've really thought and I've tried to explain something to undo harmful theology around the cross or around hell or around whatever. And at the end of it, they've gone, we didn't believe in that anyway. Like, what are you talking about? Of course, the Father didn't kill the Son. Like, of course, God didn't pour out his wrath on Jesus. Like, what? They're almost like, huh? And I'm like, okay, great. That's so anyway, it's all I'm saying is it's a work in progress for me. It's really difficult.
I was just thinking about our children when gosh, I'm trying to remember how young they were, and I don't remember ever talking to them not about stuff, not certainly from a theological perspective. It was we never taught them about the Bible rather than the base level of the character of Christ. I don't think there's any kids. I mean, I think adults struggle incredibly with trying to understand the ins and outs, as we talked about a lot with the Bible, and how a book can be both hypocritical and contradictory and repeats itself and then contradicts itself and then blah blah blah. It's a mess for theologians, let alone for kids. But I don't remember ever teaching, so we just became Christians and went to church, and they came along with us and went to the equivalent youth things that they did at the church. And when we decided to leave, we didn't talk them out of it. We didn't tell them why, or we told them why when they asked why we were no longer going. And they just made up their own mind and own decision and got to the point where they were mature enough to go, well, we don't really buy it either, Dad. And so they just stopped believing when we stopped believing. We didn't tell them to. We didn't tell them not to. We let them grow up and mature into intelligent people, because I think for something to wrestle with the belief in something that isn't provable is an incredibly brave thing, and fraught with the possibilities of incorrect decisions and beliefs. I think there's just a massive danger about expecting children to be able to make decisions, because no matter what you say or do, you are still dad, and dad
Yeah.
is always right. And dad, we need dad for everything to learn about. So everything that they learn going through now, they know it's okay because dad agrees with it. No matter how many times you say, ask the questions yourself, they don't know what those questions are, because they don't, and they don't need us. One of the great joys of being a child is be free to not have any questions, be free to don't need to know the answers to these things, because they're not relevant to your growing up now and just learning how to be a good person, good boy, good girl. And it's I don't remember we ever did that. And the result is that none of our kids are believers, but they are beautiful, caring, loving children, considerate of other people, always willing to do, will never say no when they're asked to do whatever. They will stop to someone on the side of the road. They'll do all of those things. So we wanted to make sure out of everything that they were taught the things that were really important, that mattered in life, about caring for other human beings, no matter what you call yourself, what you believe in, or what, as long as we've always said along here, as long as you're not a dick, that's the number one thing that you want at the end. That's what you sit back as an adult and go, wow, I cannot believe my kids are like that. We didn't push them to be doctors or scientists or friggin' lawyers or whatever. You throwing lawyers in there was a really bad sample, Rowie. But just to be the people who you want to be. I'm not that I wouldn't be proud if one of our kids was a doctor or whatever, but that's irrelevant. We didn't push them into any kind of. None of them followed in my footsteps. None of them got into radio. That was. They always saw it. They're always around it. They always appreciated and respected it. But none of them ever said, "Dad, I want to be like you." Tom's a musician, and we had a hip hop band and stuff, so he followed in that direction. But nothing else. Is just be good people. Do your thing.
How good's that? For me, that's a win, because
they
felt the permission to become their own people.
Correct.
And that's all you can do. And if that means that they're believers, amen. If that means that they're atheists, amen. It actually, it's almost a total side thing if they were raised in that way. Right? So are they good people? Do they feel empathy? Do they see people or systems or the world that's hurting, and do they try and make a small difference? They don't need to save the world, but do they try and make something a little bit better? Do they leave places better than than it was when they got there? Like little things like that. That's you've won. That's great. And actually, when you're talking, saying how your kids, they're atheists, for lack of a better word, but they'll always help everyone. And I'm thinking, that's the Good Samaritan parable. At the time, the most shocking thing for the people that were hearing it was to use Samaritans as the example of the ones. Maybe the church needs to hear that parable today, and instead of Samaritans, atheists are it. It's like, hey, you want to know who are the people that are walking past, that are using political agendas and things to actually not see their neighbor that has fallen over, but who are the people that are actually stepping in and doing the work of God? The ones who don't believe in God, the atheists. It's like that turns that whole thing on its head as well. It's stupid, because you and I both know that there is not a moral issue with people being an atheist. There's not a deficiency. Like, it shouldn't be shocking, but for a large part of the church, it probably would be, because of that caricature of, what it is to be a believer or not. But I think that's beautiful, mate, what you've done there.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's it's a beautiful thing to be proud of. It really is. Yeah, just gorgeous. More conversation with Jenk. Every Christian, right or left, negotiates with the biblical text
Correct.
you have in order to make it more meaningful and useful to our lives. Yeah, it's something we talk about often. Jenk, I changed it to our lives and your lives and said, okay, cool. And nothing wrong with that as long as you're not claiming objectivity and speaking on behalf of God.
Sometimes I do, Jack. So the Lord has told me you must clean your room. I'm getting.
You do not say that.
The Lord has said, if you continue fighting with your sister, fire and brimstone away. Yeah. No.
Actually, you're not going to hell. You're not even good enough to get in there. So just.
Right. If I said that, he's like, Dad, I know you don't believe in hell. You've already explained it to me. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, there's a special hell for people who bully their sisters.
Yeah.
Nah.
I need to just go and have a quick break. Can I leave you to talk? Well, you can go as well. Jenk's not going anywhere. He's going to stick around. Then I want to play that video of that woman and see where that leads us.
Okay.
You cool?
Yep. We also need to talk about why Pascal's wager doesn't work as well.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to do that before.
Okay.
You dropped me. There is nothing weirder than just talking to yourself on a screen. And it's weird with just the text responses, and they're delayed as well because it's not like a conversation. So it feels really awkward. But Rowie seems to do it. He managed to do it for hours. But I think like an audio podcast is different. You can just kind of ramble on. That's all right. It's just the video aspect of it. It's like Talladega Nights where he doesn't know what to do with his hands. But AI Jenk, you're too smart for AI. You're too real. They still haven't quite got it right. Maybe it's the prompts I'm using, but I like it. That's the thing with AI. That there's no history. There's nothing but cold data feeding it. You don't have lived experiences that can shape the responses, which is what we get from you, which is awesome. But it's good. I always know whenever we have a topic, we might touch on it, we might get through it, but it just kind of curves all over the place. But I think that's half the beauty of it. You kind of want to see where it goes. You could make it just a sterile 40 minutes and just stay on topic. And then it becomes a bit more like a lecture. It's a bit less personal. You certainly wouldn't get this, me just rabbiting on about nothing really in particular. So, that'd be a con. Definitely a tick against it. I don't know if Robbie's still listening. He probably is. I better not say much about him. But we should finish up on Pascal's wager. I think the video is going to play. That'll lead us down a different path. But it's going to be good. Robbie's secrets. Oh, there's loads. He's a musician. No, it's not much of a secret. What else? Do you want to know a secret? I haven't met Rowie in real life, and we live my wife has, but we live like a couple of suburbs away. So we do need to sort that out. But I've only ever hung out with Rowie digitally, which is kind of the same thing, but not really. So I don't know too many of his secrets. Do you know what? He might not even have legs. I've never seen the bottom half of his body. So that could be a secret. He's often legless by the end of the podcast. So maybe that leads in. He enjoys a wine, but we all do. Well, cider on this side. But it's hard to talk about this stuff. without having a tipple. No legs, Rowie. Exactly. If he's not listening to any of this, he's just going to be confused by his new nickname. But I'll have to find out some more of the secrets. He's like the, you know what? He's kind of like Splinter, and where the Ninja Turtles were all like a bit wild and all over the place. He tries to keep us all together, which is hard to do these days. Everyone's been busy, gone crazy. I think we probably need to get an expanded panel going so that if one of us are busy, we've got like a few different people, or even some different. What am I thinking? Like it'd be interesting to get, like Christians who maybe are more conservative, or more fundamentalist in their beliefs. Be good to hear their point of view. Mention mining companies are a problem in Australia. Do they have a stranglehold on Aussie politics? Look, it's not as obvious as like the NRA or some of those more prominent lobbyists and the impact on American politics, but it's certainly there. It's not as obvious also because most of the mining is done over on our side of Australia in WA, and obviously the federal government and a lot of the major players and whatnot are over east. So there can be some tension between WA and over east. So I don't know how much sway the mining companies do have federally. I know they certainly have a big impact on the state. But when we're talking Gina Reinhart and Twiggy Forrest and some of these billionaires, they're certainly involved on that level federally as well. So I think it does have quite a big stranglehold. It's just not as obvious. Legless Rowie. Were you listening to any of that?
To what sequence? Actually, you could hear everything that you were saying anyway. So that's
shit.
Yeah. What's lol no legs Rowie?
Because I said that I've never. He wanted me to tell him all your secrets,
right?
And I said, well, I've actually never. This one secret is I've never met Rowie in real life, only digitally, which we need to remedy. But I said,
I've met your wife.
Yeah, no, I said that.
I met your wife twice.
Yeah. I said that with no context, so it's probably thinking, okay. But I said, because I've never seen, he might not have any legs. I said, I've never seen the bottom half of him. I've only ever seen the top half. I said, but he is usually legless by the end of the podcast anyway. So,
jeez, legless. Yeah. Well, I mean, my legs are kept the secret for a reason.
Yeah, fair enough.
Legs like a dining chair. So just for FYI, the NRA has no impact on the American right these days.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that.
No.
I know it used to be a big player, but I would imagine not much has an impact on the American right these days other than groveling up to Trump. But yeah, that's interesting. Well, hopefully if that keeps going that way, then they can get eventually some legislation through. Although if Trump's in power, I doubt it's going to be much.
He's not slightest bit interested in getting rid. He was the idiot that said that teachers should have guns way back. I mean,
insane.
Yeah. Anyway, let me see if I can just track down this thing, which I think is it's not there. Here it is. Okay, let me play this. As I said, Jenk will know because this is the woman that sits next to the dude that he's using as his troll face. So this came on today, and I'll just play it, and we'll see where we go with it.
These comments might be strong, but it's how I genuinely feel. I don't care that you're a Christian. I don't care what the Bible says. Like, I feel like it's a clown show, like sitting here trying to decipher what your little mythical book has to say about these very real political issues, right? I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care. I don't believe in it. And I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Not sure how we get back out of that. Actually, I know how to do that, but how do we get back to where we were? Wow. That didn't help. Are we still on? Yeah, I wasn't sure how I got back into the reason why I wanted to play that, and Jenk, you will know. Oh, hang on, where is we got to get back to Jenk? There he is. Yeah, Jenk, you will know who she is. And I wanted to play it because I think we can both understand her frustration, particularly in America. Again, totally different than it is in Australia. Wherever you're watching tonight live on YouTube, thank you too, by the way, for tuning in and being a part of this podcast. And please be involved if you want to have a comment. Absolutely, you are more than welcome. And in fact, we thrive on it. And Jenk has kept us going tonight, which is absolutely fabulous. So, mate, really appreciate that. But something that we can both look at, Luke, and that is that in America particularly, and it's very different in Australia, and I can't talk about any other countries in the world because our greatest connection throughout history has been pretty much the UK and America, simply because we are linked as allies. So therefore we have a vested interest in what happens in America, because America does impact the rest of the world and certainly us as well. Is that we don't, in America, it seems like if you're a Christian, and which most people seem to be, then it's perfectly understandable and acceptable that I should think that you should be a Christian too. And I think that's very different in Australia. It still happens to a lesser degree, but in America, it just seems my lovely
Armenian co-host.
You're really playing the part, aren't you, of this guy? I'm going to look into it. I'm going to find out who this dude is. As I said, I've watched him and her a lot. They are very much anti-Trump and self-confessed atheists. But it must be so hard in America not being a Christian, because it's not accepted. It's just not going, cool. In Australia, no one gives a shit. I don't believe in God. Yeah, whatever. I mean, we were technically, according to our census, a Christian nation up until about, 10 years ago. We're not considered Christian anymore. And I don't think we ever really were, to be honest. I think it was...
I don't think it doesn't exist.
No. I mean, it's just purely answering on the census, which you probably have in America as well, which is just a form that's sent around to everyone, every single house in Australia, and we have to fill it out. Who lives in the house? Why? When? Where? What is your belief? Blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. And they collate that information together and work out, going, "Oh, Australia's a Christian nation." Australia's never been a Christian nation. It wasn't occupied or taken over by any kind of staunch Catholicism or Anglicans or anything. There was no record that I'm aware of historically about the religiosity of Captain Cook or any of the the dudes. I mean, I unless I've missed something, I don't know. I was not aware
It's a
of anything.
contradiction in terms anyway. Christian nation. It's something that shouldn't exist. It doesn't. It cannot exist. It's a weird thing to be hung for, to want. You know, it's steeped in history, but that's certainly not steeped in the Bible. It's certainly not the way. But I think what her anger was. I don't think it's less about the, being pressured socially, but it's more the impact it's had politically and therefore on their rights. Like what's the mixture of church and state, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Which Tony Campolo used to say is the best. It's like mixing horse manure and ice cream. The ice cream doesn't do much to the horse manure, but a little bit of horse manure certainly ruins the ice cream. And I thought that was very on point.
I like that.
And I'll let you continue and I'll respond shortly, but I just want to say I agree wholeheartedly with her and about the position that she was talking about with Roe versus Wade being overturned. I think that's worth talking about.
Yeah,
I can understand the outrage, and it's fully justified.
Oh, and I feel her passion, and as I was kind of alluding to the difference between Australia and America is that she and Jenk might be able to shine a bit of light on this and give us a bit more clarity, but it just seems like it's such you're almost an outcast because if you don't, it's not accepted as being normal. When people in America seem to be told that someone's not a Christian, they kind of seem to act like it's up to them to change that very, very quickly because they cannot accept. And there was when I stopped becoming a Christian. I think I might have told you the story briefly before, Luke, and this family that we spent a lot of time with. We used to have home church and everything with them. And all the years later, when they found out that they had to talk to me, they had to get inside my head and find out what's happening because it can't happen. You can't not be a Christian. You love God. You believe in God. So we know you can't. This can't be. So what could possibly have happened? And I just said, I just don't believe it's just not my choice. The existence of the absence of God became real, and the feeling of sense that there was such a thing, it's gone. And they're going, no, that's no. Did you see their brains just exploding with this illogical thought patterns that I'm having? You can't. You just no.
Not to mention the role the church had in that, because you had a bunch of questions that no one was willing to answer.
That's right.
And so, and if that's not a red flag, and if that's not going to confirm everything else that you're thinking, I don't know what is. So no. It's like they're absolutely complicit in that.
Yeah, exactly. And he was an ex-pastor as well. And I said someone should have been able to answer the questions to the level of making me understand that perhaps my decision was incorrect or ill-informed or blah blah blah. But anyway, the long story short is that they just went, we will be praying for you, and then we know you'll come back. And I went, well, you don't know that. And I said, anything's possible. Never say never, but go for it. Pray to your heart's content. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But you will never know if I have come back. And they went, why? And I said, because you're casting me out of your life. You've completely and utterly, as a pastor and a family who once loved us, you have made a decision that somehow you cannot be friends with people who no longer believe because they did. And if you have any idea that that's the character of Christ, you, my friend, need to go back and try reading that book properly with an open heart and an open mind, because you are 100% wrong, and you're part of the reason why I have no desire to walk in your footsteps, because you are a lost, lonely, incorrect, sad man, and goodbye to this relationship. End of
Who
story.
treats his friends like trading cards.
Correct.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, and all of a sudden, if you don't need this card anymore because it doesn't line up to your own beliefs or whatever, it's discarded. Well, really, is this how relationships between human beings are supposed to? Is this what the Bible teaches? Is this what Jesus modeled? Yeah, because if it is, I don't want any part of it. And if it isn't, why are you acting that way? Yeah, so that's a clear cut. That's anti-evangelism.
I said to him, "You are the antithesis of Jesus in every possible aspect of your fiber. There's nothing in you whatsoever that shares anything of value to what I believe in the character of Jesus. Nothing. And if you're willing to walk away from this, like somehow your preconceived ideas don't match in with what's happening, and the only way you can cope with it is to ostracize us, then goodbye to your family." And we've never seen them since. And it was not only pathetic, but it was shocking to see that played out from the people that we knew. You're okay. We will love you till the cows come home as long as you're sharing that faith. But the very second you want to stop it, gone ski. It's like, and I can guarantee you that it was his way. I can guarantee you his beautiful wife would not. She would have agreed to do it and done it because of that, but not because she thought it was right or true. You could see she's smarter than that. But he had this weird. Anyway, we digress for no purpose, but that was just something I needed to share.
I think it links in. Because you've got to look at that story and you have to say. So the question I ask with that is, I just go, what drives someone? What drives someone to have a faith and then for it to enact itself in that way? What was so important for them to keep you?
I know. I can't work it out.
Because it wasn't what. And I can't speak for them, so I've got to be careful here. I don't want to speak out of turn, but it doesn't appear to be, we love you. We genuinely think this is the best way to live life. We genuinely believe what we believe. And so we want that for you. And we're sad that you have found yourself in this position for whatever reason, right? Because if that was the case, even when you decided to continue down that path and you said, yep, great, thanks for that, but I'm not, my mind is still made up. Well, if they loved you, then they would still be in your life. It would still be like, okay, we get it. We had to have the conversation. We wanted to have the conversation, but okay, like, let's move forward sort of thing. It wasn't that. So it can't have been out of that. So what was it? And I think it does. It comes back to this idea of, the cynical part of me is like, is it numbers? Is it wanting to keep someone in the flock, in the tithing and all that sort of stuff? But I don't want to go that cynical, even if that played any small part in it. But I think maybe it comes down to this theology of eternal conscious torment. Maybe they genuinely believe, like, okay, so now that you are no longer in the church, you no longer believe, you backslidden, and all the crap language that is put around it. Maybe they genuinely believe that, okay, so now you're destined for hell. But then once you scratch the surface of that, and this is where Pascal's wager links into it, you go, well, I don't think it actually can be that either. Because if someone genuinely thought that through and they genuinely believed that, it wouldn't be an innocent conversation. It would be, you would be dragging and screaming. It would just be, you wouldn't have to try to convince people to evangelize. It would be, if you genuinely thought that your loved ones who didn't know Jesus were actually going to an eternal conscious torment hell,
That's right.
like if even the people that say they believe it, even the people that preach it and all that, if they actually truly believed it, then they wouldn't be going to Macca's to get a coffee. You actually wouldn't be doing anything other than going insane trying to save people from this thing. So we actually don't genuinely believe it when it comes down to it. It's one of those things we say we believe, but I don't think you can actually truly grasp that and not be just damaged by it and not have it consume your entire life. Some people are, and some people do, I think, grasp it. And that's where we see some pretty extreme forms of fundamentalism spring up. But I think it's just something that is said that we just can't. It's almost like when you say the word trillion, or when you say, that the sun is however many light years away. It's like our brains can't really comprehend it. We go, oh yeah, okay, that's far, that's a long way, but you can't actually conceive of that amount.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah,
I think it's the same, and surely it just starts to fall apart when you do that.
Yeah, it wasn't even the whole going to hell. It wasn't even an issue. It wasn't even brought up. That wasn't the reason that they were even freaking out, going, "Oh my God, we actually believe in hell, and you have just turned your back on God. So 2 and 2 equals 4. So therefore, that's where you're going." There was never that. Please don't. We love you. Blah 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 blah. And at the end, it wasn't. Look, we're broken. We're disappointed. We get that. Yeah, but God love you. So Dave, if you're listening, and I know you won't be, contact me, mate. I would love to have an explanation as to why you thought that was more important to you than anything else. It's heartbreaking. It's a relationship finished based upon some bizarre concept or idea that you thought we were in the middle of or a part of, and then when it decided that one of the people, and I said, what happened, what I would do to you if I found out that you would no longer believe it? He went, no, knowing you thought I was going to say I'd do what you do. I'd say I wouldn't make the slightest bit of difference, mate, because I love you as a person. That your beliefs have got nothing to do with why I love you. Nothing. Yep. It's not. You might think that that's the only thing that ever brought us together, and in that sense, I understand that you're probably devastated that which you thought was the glue has now gone, and so therefore there's nothing else. And if that's the case, then there was nothing really to build a relationship on in the first place. So off you go. Yeah. Off you go. All done. Thank you. Good night. It's really, really sad. Anyway, back to Jean. To put it into context, that clip was from her responding to Roe v. Wade being overturned, which sent the right to have an abortion back to the States. Was that? I only just seen it. So in this day and age, when you see stuff on screen, you tend to think that it's new because it just came on. But is that clip? I know Roe v. Wade it's a very old case, but is that from then, or is that a recent comment?
Well, it was only overturned pretty recently. It was last year, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, where it was overturned and given back to the state. So now it's whether abortions were allowed or not is back to the states. So you can imagine some of those South states, the deeply religious, the Bible Belt, things like that.
Yeah,
just outright banned. And there are some more progressive states that would continue to allow it.
Okay.
But what's Jenk say? Over a year old. So probably about a year ago or so. Not
okay.
long. I
wasn't aware of that. I mean, I was aware of the original court case, obviously, the whole thing, Roe v. Wade. That was what would have to be 20, 30 years ago, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So that was
So just correct me. Is this something that Trump instigated to overturn it? or had anything to do with him, or why was it overturned
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
recently?
It was Republicans, and
Yeah,
and
okay.
his so his alignment with the Christian far right, not even far right, just the Christian right.
Yeah, in the
So
70s.
obviously the church's position, and there's a great documentary called Bad Faith. I encourage you to
Right.
watch it. It's amazing.
Okay.
It goes into the origins of this,
Thanks.
of why why is it that abortion is a hot topic? Why is it that gender or homosexuality is a hot topic? There seem to be these tiny little things that
Of course.
they seem so much bigger than what they are represented in the Bible, or what they even have been historically within the church. They've just not been issues.
Well,
And yet
it's
all
one
of a
of the
sudden
greatest
they
prob-
become the main issue. They become what everything is about. And they are presented as, this is a battle for God, right? In terms of political. And so obviously in Trump's alignment with, his endorsement by the Christian right, which helped him consolidate power, I guess that was a result of one of it. And he stacked the Supreme Court and did a whole bunch of stuff and ended up overturning it. But it's it was really it was very sad, actually. Yeah.
but you can see
I'll say that as a Christian.
her greatest frustration was the fact that it's just because your belief doesn't agree with something has nothing to do with your right or perceived right to tell people that they're wrong, that this is what God mandates. I don't believe in God. Doesn't matter. God said God is the authority over everyone, whether they believe in him or not. And that has been the greatest issue about it since modern Christianity, since people decided to believe, and you don't believe, then you're wrong and you're going to hell, and I can't be your friend, and we can't go to your wedding. We can't. You're gay, so you can't be our son. So we have to ostracize you and destroy your life, just so we can feel right that God is looking down, saying, "Yes, well done. That's exactly. You know what? It's exactly what I expected you to do. How you could not possibly love your son who's homosexual. So well done for rejecting him. That's exactly what I want done." And they feel better about it.
I should know because I am love. So I. And you know what? And for those listening who maybe don't understand, I actually believe God is love. I'm not saying this. I think if you listen to this episode, you'd probably be like, here's a couple of atheists that are just railing against the church. I believe in God. I am a Christian. But that's the thing. The hardest thing for me is seeing this sort of stuff, because people, they'll rally about this sort of stuff and they'll say, well, this is God's position. That's not God's position. It may be. I definitely do not think it is, and that's not just from thoughts. That's through extensive study and a lot of. There's a lot behind my belief in that. It's not just because I don't want it to be true, but it's another time to explain all of that. But the people pushing this agenda, they're saying this is God's position, but it's not God's position. It's their interpretation of a particular passage in the Bible and their particular political leanings, culminating in them presenting it as God's position, which is a very, very, very different thing. A very different thing. But aside from all of that, it should never, ever, ever, and the example of Jesus is crystal clear. It should never, the way to bring heaven on earth, the way for the kingdom of God to be at hand is never through force, and it's never through political manipulation. It was never about trying to change the laws so that the Christian ways can then be put on everyone else. That has never been the game plan ever. It was always, and they kept asking Jesus, when are we going to take over? When, they expected him to do it that way, top down, and he kept saying, no, we are bottom up. Let's just concern yourselves with the poor. Spend time with the people that no one looks at a second. Give to those who need. Like, concern yourself on that level, and then things like there will be a groundswell of change. That's how the kingdom comes. It's not actually about taking over, because you get up to this point and that power is corrupting, and all of a sudden it's not God's agenda, it's your agenda, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. And this is what killed me. Oh, so you go, yep.
I was going to say, up until then, of course, that's all they'd ever witnessed about power, and Jesus was the antithesis of that, to turn it upside down, which is why the Romans and none of the priests, they couldn't cope with this lunatic threatening our power to do it the other way around. Are you serious? And that is why it's been the issue with the character of Christ since the very beginning, because he was the opposite to what everyone else was going. They're going, but this is no. The Old Testament, mate. Have you read it? I mean, fair income. You're way out of line, mate. This is not how God operates. It's all about power. And he's going, well, it's not. And they're going, well, just obviously lost the plot, mate. So you're not going to be around here very long. Goodbye. And just.
They're saying, mate, you missed the memo. God's a conquering warrior,
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, actually, I'm going to the cross. And they're going, yeah, righto.
Yeah.
He's like, no, seriously. And they still didn't believe him. And then he does it. And it's like, wow. So true power is actually in not using the power that you have. True strength is in weakness. It's actually about power below rather than power over. So like coming under and supporting people rather than dominating and controlling. But that whole thing is antithetical to how we think things should work. That thing within us that wants power and control. And so it always ends up rearing its head. It always ends up taking over the show until...
Because that's how man has been since the beginning, and Jesus wasn't the first person to come along and say, there's a better way. I mean, there was lots of people that did it before him, and none of them landed very successfully in that as well, because it is the opposite to what the human beings think they have to do. Well, in many ways, that's how it was in the beginning. It was that male dominance and power. Power was to be respected. Weakness was not, and many people saw Jesus as not only a nut but as a weak man as well.
Well, it's funny. There's Roman graffiti that dates back to this time that is just mocking Christians because their God that they worship was crucified, and it's kind of like it'd be like us. It's like, oh wow, your God went to the electric chair, and was executed. It's like, what are you talking about? It's laughable, and yet it's the most powerful thing. We think revenge is the thing that's going to make us feel better and is what is needed, and yet forgiveness is infinitely more powerful and infinitely more impactful, not only on us but on those around us. I always bring back you look at nonviolent resistance. So in the civil rights era, they had every reason to firebomb police stations to do all sorts of stuff. Totally. It's just, and there were people that do it. There were people that did think that was the reason. It was supposed to be a violent resistance, and yet it's this non-violent walk across, the bridge in Selma. That it was the whole world seeing them being beaten and not lifting a finger back, which is, you would look at and you go, oh, that's the total act of weakness, and that shouldn't do anything. And that was the thing that actually started to shatter it. There's a long way to go still, but it's insane. This stuff that shouldn't work does, and that's the Sermon on the Mount. It's all of the upside downs. But I think for me, Alexamenos Graffito. There you go. Jenks all over it.
Okay, fill me in. I don't know what that is.
That's that graffiti I was talking about. Where
oh yes,
yeah,
oldest known depiction of Jesus.
but they're mocking. It's like they're taking the piss out of him, and Christ has
Well,
a
I think-
donkey's head in it.
I think the Mel Gibson movie, depicted that if it's accurate and true, and I don't have no reason to believe that it is or it isn't. I have no idea, but that was very, very clear message of the abuse. You know, if you're the Son of God, you know, bring it on, show it, prove it, do it. What the hell? You go under the cross. Clearly, you're just a weak man, and the Romans absolutely. They reveled in that because it was a fulfillment of what they believed was true about the character of Christ, and
what their idea of God was. God was warrior. God was is powerful. You know, that's how they conquered, and they were on the heels of Alexander the Great, who conquered the same way, on the heels of Assyria and Babylonia, and it turned everything upside down, but. Interestingly, I think just gone back with that video. I just want to mention there's a guy I follow, Reverend Benjamin Kramer, and he's amazing. He's very, very smart guy, and when this all happened, he actually released something and it was fantastic, talking about there's a difference between being pro-life and being anti-abortion, and so
yes, I saw that.
Amazing, you know, Christians are labelled that movement pro-life, right? Because they don't want babies to die. I don't want babies to die. Like nobody wants babies to die. The mothers who are in a position where they're needing to have an abortion or wanting to have an abortion, they don't want their babies to. So it's like this. No one wants that, but at the same time, there are so many different situations that need to be factored in for this, and you can't be pro-life for a fetus and yet not be pro-life for the mother. Or once you've got what you wanted and they've been refused an abortion, so this 14-year-old girl has to have this baby and raise it in a trailer park or whatever, are you pro-life after that? Are you pro-life in making sure that baby, once it's born, has the resources needed? Are you actively campaigning for paid parental leave, for improved education, for dismantling systems of oppression and poverty that keep people stuck in this situation, that keep women in particular stuck in these positions, in the various situations and positions that cause them to feel that they need to have an abortion? It's such a bigger conversation, but there's no work, there's no picketing, there is no campaigning, it's like there's no passion or pro-life agenda in fixing any of that stuff.
Correct.
It's become this hot topic about, and that documentary that I mentioned earlier goes into why it's a political topic, but it focuses in so much on that. And his whole thing was, that's not pro-life, that's anti-abortion. Yes. Pro-life is totally encompassing. Pro-life recognizes that even in the case of an abortion, there are situations that have led to that. And sometimes that's the best thing for the mother, you know, and her life matters. And there's all of this stuff. It's a very, very different situation. And I think that's what's missing. And it kills me. That really gets me, because again, it's black and white. It's made to be black or white, but it's not. That's not the world that we live in. The world is grey. There are situations and circumstances that need to be considered.
13-year-old girl being raped by a drunken stepfather or whatever, and being forced to. You have to have the. We have a rule. It cannot be bent. It cannot be broken. It cannot be compromised. There's a rule that is the child. All we care about is the rule, which is that the child has to have a baby to someone who she was raped by.
Yep. And how many? What about the danger put in people doing backyard abortions? Because you don't think that's absolutely going to happen in these states where it's been outlawed. Yeah. And
it's not outlawing. It's not getting rid of abortion. It's abiding by a stupid rule. That's all they're interested in.
Correct. Based on and this is the outrage that the woman was saying, and I think it's so spot on, because this isn't a rule that everyone voted in based
No.
on we think this is the best thing for society. This is something that's come in very, very clearly from a religious agenda that's based on a particular interpretation of that. And you go, but it's badged as this is what God wants. It's like, well, yeah, but maybe God doesn't get to have a say in how we run our society in a democracy.
Correct.
You know, and I don't think that's needs to happen. You know, it's I
have a very confused. I went with a partner of mine to an abortion clinic, and I've gone through the process, and did that, and thankfully, it wasn't my. Well, we're not 100% sure whether it was actually my child or not, but we went through that, and we were allowed to because it was legal and it was professional and all of that stuff. But it's left me in a really difficult place. And it's hard to say just because you don't want the child for whatever reason, a relationship that wasn't meant to be or whatever. It's hard to me to grapple with. Therefore, you have the right to terminate it.
Yeah.
Because and back then when I was a Christian, I watched all the videos of proving that a child is being dismembered and just horrendous stuff. And it was at the end of the day, it wasn't a matter of, okay, well, you don't want to have the child created and grow in your body, but I do, or I don't think you should have the baby in there, but you do. It's not. It can't work that way. It's not a simple black and white discussion and argument. Without the actual proof of me being the father, I had no right other than to support her and to go through what she felt she needed to do. And it's not easy. And you don't often hear about the trauma that women go through once they have had an abortion.
Absolutely.
Not the ones that have obviously been raped and stuff. I mean, but if someone just goes, I really didn't know I was going to get pregnant, don't mean to. I don't feel I want to go through with this. For me, it's challenging because it's still not a definitive thing. There's still not there's always the argument about when is it a child. When is it a fetus? When is it got, is a heartbeat mean that, it's such a mess. And so it's really tricky for me having gone through it. Because it's a pretty horrendous experience if you feel like you're terminating another Shakespeare or it's horrible. It's a fucking mess.
There's a gravity to it. And I think, and I absolutely understand that there are many people that have made the decision based on convenience or being at an age where they hadn't considered the gravity of what they were doing, and certainly some that have regretted it, some that haven't. But and I in my perfect world, there would never be an abortion, but there also would never be rape, and there would also never be medical conditions that so. And there also wouldn't be people stuck in systems of oppression and poverty that are, or borderline impossible to get out of, and facing a world of having a baby, knowing what that's then what kind of life that's going to be. So there's so many different factors there. But also you made a good point with the body thing, and that's the other argument. You can't legislate women's bodies. It has to come down to, it's people's right. Sure, get better education. The people that are campaigning against it, how many of them are fostering kids? How many of them are adopting special needs kids who have been born? I don't want any child to be aborted ever. But I also understand that it's easy to campaign for that and then not put your money where your mouth is in other areas,
Mm,
not recognize that sometimes it's an impossible decision. But yeah, it's quite a difficult one. I mean, and it's funny because the people that are very, that are campaigning against it being women's choices, their body, are the same ones that were refusing to wear a mask during coronavirus, saying that it's my body, it's my choice. I can do what I want. You can't legislate and make me put a mask on. Oh, but you can legislate for a woman to have a baby. Do you know what I mean? It's their they are two antithetical positions that they're taking based on their own position. It's very easy to do it from that space. In saying that, we do need, I think it's important to have a solid framework around when you can abort, when you can't, when is, all that sort of stuff.
Either way, every other woman in the world is none of my freaking business.
Yeah,
and that's the
religion
problem.
should not play a part in it.
Yeah, they try and make a blanket rule by I'm against abortion, therefore I have the right to tell everyone who is contemplating an abortion that I am against it. So therefore I've got every right to convince you otherwise. It's different if it's a man and a woman or whatever decide to have sex and they get pregnant, then it's a discussion between the two of them. I find it really hard to just say that the guy has no right in making that decision. By the same token, he can't say, I think you should, therefore you have to do it. I'm not doing anything in this. So I've done my bit. Now it's up to you if you want to carry a baby for 9 months, even though you don't want to and you don't love it and it's not what you wanted to get out of this. I think you should go through the whole thing anyway. And these decisions are made by freaking rich white men who have no freaking idea what it's actually like to go through any of that stuff.
Of course.
They wouldn't have the faintest idea what it actually means.
100%.
Real good, caring people of all ilks and religions and whatever can come together and agree as intelligent men. As soon as you introduce people like JD and like friggin' Trump, who have got some weird motives based upon God knows what, it just turns into a complete and utter mess, which hurts people who are just trying to just get on with their lives.
It shouldn't factor into it. That religion, like anyone's interpretation of anything, it's not. Yeah, I mean,
it's the same impact on stem cell and assisted dying and all of that kind of stuff. And
like I said, be pro-life. I'm pro-life.
Yeah,
be pro all life. Campaign like work towards a world in which no woman ever wants to get an abortion because they know that when they have the baby, they're going to be supported by their community. They're going to be supported by the government. They're going to be there are infrastructure and things in place for them to be able to provide that baby with a life, even if they're not the mother. Even if they don't raise the child.
Of course.
But that's not the world we live in yet. And so for those who want to make a change, don't worry about overturning Roe versus Wade. Work on that stuff. Work on it being, that's the source. Figure out not the symptom, get to the root of the issue. That's what we need to do. And don't just badge it that God doesn't want this and therefore we need to impose this on everyone. That's just bullshit. That's absolute rubbish.
People that tend to know what God wants, I find very annoying. I'm going to take a break. You can have a break. You don't have to sit there and try talking to people, but I'm just going to take a 2-minute break. So I'll be back. Yeah, you can do the same if you have to. Okay, cheers.
2 minutes. Jank, safe, legal, and rare. Yeah, I like that. I think that's perfect. That's a great way to sum it up. That's what we should be working towards. Yeah, blanket moves based from a religious ideology and an interpretation that's just that is not, it's not the way, certainly not the way that Jesus modeled in my understanding, in my experience. It's hard, but I certainly understand her outrage. I love that Rowie has just kept up your comment about Christ has a donkey's head. Anyone that was just tuning in, it's like that's the headline. It's almost like that's what we're talking about. So no one has any context. Don't think he knows how to undo it. He just forgets. But I don't have the power. I'm not the VIP. It's so, yeah, it's great. It's so distracting because I'm trying to talk about something really important and I just keep reading this same sentence about Christ having a donkey's head. He's a classic. Yeah, very funny. It's so hard because I've got no time awareness. That's one thing about me. So I don't know if I've been talking for 5 seconds or 10 minutes. And so I kind of just keep glancing at Rowie's face to just see how frustrated and annoyed he's getting. And once I see that he's reached a certain point, I then just wind it up. So it's kind of how I gauge it. But otherwise, who knows? I'll just keep going. And round. I really should have some sort of notes, but my brain doesn't really work that way. So I just talk until I realize I'm annoying the person that I'm talking to, and then I stop. So I find it works well.
I hear what you're talking about, mate. I've spent 40 years talking to no one in radio. This is so different.
It's different with video, right?
Well, it is because as a radio announcer for a music station, although I did talk back as well, you'd play 2 or 3 songs and you'd come out and say that was blah, 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 blah. They're coming to town, da, 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 da. And then you go back into the songs and this is like nonstop being attentive. And it's, I'm still not used to it. Been doing radio for most of my life and this freaks me out. It's just weird. Although when I decided to actually do that it'd be 2 months ago, when I decided to stay up after midnight Perth time, and then there was a whole new audience out there. That was good. I managed to do that for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and started getting used to it. But some people could do it. Some people are really good. They can just sit there and just talk and just have so much knowledge about what it is they're talking about. If you give me something, ironically, after 25 years of being a Christian, because I wasn't into the sort of theological, I was very much into the connective emotion part of the relationship with God. I didn't have to learn a lot. It was just there. It was something I felt and understood. But give me a subject that I know about, and I'm okay. But when it comes to this, most of the stuff I talk about when it comes to the existence of God and evidence and all that kind of stuff, a lot of it comes to me as I'm talking about it, and these new thoughts come in, and I've done that through the whole series of the podcast. But I feel quite ignorant because I've never been interested in it. When an example, when Jen talked about the graffiti, I have no knowledge of that whatsoever because I've never looked into it. I've never been interested by it. My relationship with God was so very much a personal thing between me and him that didn't need all of the other stuff around it. That I didn't find it interesting. I don't find it intriguing. That's not why I fell in love with God. But other people get more out of it, like you and Rich are very much into the deeper intellectual discussions about the theological realities of what it is you're reading in the Bible and stuff. Whereas that never, ever. I mean, yes, of course, I read the Bible a couple of times, but I never studied it. It didn't grab me. That's not why I was in relationship with God. It was nothing to do with that. It was almost something out of my control. It just happened to just happen. I'm just reading some of safe, legal, and rare. Don't know what that is. It's hilarious. Rowie is adorable. What?
Because me and Jink were talking about how you've still got the comment about Christ having a donkey's head highlighted. So anyone joining in, that's what they're going to see, and it's still up on the screen.
Yeah, I was planning on asking about it, but what does it mean?
It's just in the graffiti.
It's a part of the graffiti. I figured that's what it must have been.
Yeah.
So
because they're mocking Jesus. So I'm pretty sure that's why they've used the donkey's head. Yeah. Like, yeah. So, but it's just funny that stayed up there. I just said anyone tuning in, they're going to be like, what the hell are these guys talking about?
What has that got to do with me being adorable?
Because I said you've probably forgotten that it's highlighted.
Right. It's still highlighted. I'm leaving it there till next week.
Do it.
There was a rumor going around in the ancient world that early Christians worshipped a donkey.
Ah.
Okay. Well, they certainly played a part as far as the Good Samaritan was riding a donkey. Jesus at one stage rode a donkey.
Well, I was going to say, so Jesus, Palm Sunday, he rides in on a donkey, and they're all waving the palm fronds.
Which is nothing weird, by the way, just for those people tuning in for the first time. Donkeys were a normal part of transport back in the day. Horses weren't a part of civilization at that stage. They hadn't been introduced from wherever they came from. I don't know, back in the early day.
That's true. But it's a callback to Zechariah as well. It was it was a statement basically about being the Messiah. But this is maybe what Jenk is saying is maybe the people got confused. They're waving these big palms, and the rumor was they're not worshiping the bloke riding the donkey. It's just the donkey. I reckon that's
right.
Surely that's where the confusion started.
I find it hard to believe that the donkeys, which were an animal totally utilized for transportation and perhaps work, I can't imagine that they were worshipped. Where is it in the Bible where it says they were worshipped? Jink, can you know where? Tell us where.
It's not in the Bible. It's just this would be the background to that graffiti. So there would have been like in the early Christian church, there's a rumor going around that these weird people that had no interest in power, but just were hanging out with people that had no status, they worshipped a donkey. So whether it was like a cruel joke that turned into a rumor or genuine confusion, I'm not sure. But hence the donkey's head.
And they don't mention whether it was a Jenny or what's the male equivalent? Jenny is a female donkey.
Luke.
What?
Luke. The male donkey, Luke? No? Isn't that what they're not? No? I thought that was what they were known for. No.
Only in your dreams, bud. Only in your dreams. Okay, what's this one? It's not in the Bible. It's just a disinformation spread by non-Christians. Yeah, okay. If you're still listening, whoever you are, our locals normally put in a comment. Luke, the husband and wife team.
Kirk and Tam.
Yeah, I'd love to know whether they're tuned in. They're usually gone by this time of night. 10:30. But yeah, if you listen, look at all the comments. This started back 8:03 was the first comment from Jenk, and it's now 10:33. Wow, that's amazing. But anyone else, if you're a part of what we're doing tonight on this amazing podcast, an atheist, a believer, and a pastor walk into a bar. It is 10:34. Now that's in Australia, or in fact Western Australia, because even though we all live in the same country, there is a time difference, not because of geographical reasons like most countries, like there's different time zones in America. Our time zones in Australia are the thing called daylight saving, which I really can't be bothered getting into. But needless to say, the eastern states, which is about, what's the distance between Perth to the furthest, which would be Sydney, across
It's
the...
about the equivalent of like LA to New York. It's very similar to North America.
Right.
Similar
Right.
size.
But the time difference can be up to 3 hours, which is not anything kind of necessary. I think the basics of it are is that in Western Australia, we have plenty of sun. We don't need to get up earlier to enjoy any more sunshine. We already have enough, and all of the people freak out because the curtains fade when there's too much sunshine, and you can't.
And the
milk
cows, it messes up the cows.
That's right.
Stuff's
And if
up
you
there.
think that's funny, that's actually one of the reasons why in referendums we've had for the last 50 years about having daylight saving, that some of the people legitimately claimed we don't want daylight saving, which is just purely a matter of changing the time, not the amount of sunshine, saying we don't want daylight saving. Too much sunshine will fade the curtains in our house. Like somehow they managed to produce more sun. In fact, it's just an ability for those parts of Australia who like to be able to get up earlier and have more sunshine, and it's lighter later. Yeah, it doesn't work for we have perfect amount of sunshine in Western Australia, which is why we're the best place in the world, and you're not in it. So we are.
It's amazing. Come visit.
You know, it's about 7 hours from New York to LA. Wow.
So from Perth to Sydney would be...
It's by flying. It's 5 hours, 5.5.
5.5 hours.
Yeah.
But our planes are faster than yours, so it's probably this equivalent.
Yeah. Well, we're going downhill.
That's exactly right.
You know, it's underneath.
Yeah. We've got the Antarctic draft.
It's the same. It's the same distance from Perth to Bali as it is from Perth to Adelaide. It's about 3 hours 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's got to do with anything, but
if you're from Perth, you are well versed in the time it takes to get to Bali by plane. It's basically a rite of passage.
Yeah,
it's like another suburb.
We stopped going there because we just went there too many times, and well, when I say too many times, probably 3 or 4, and then it became very it kind of lost its zing. That was also at a point where it was heading into COVID, and it was shocking. No one went there at all, obviously. But we're going back there this year to my son's 40th birthday.
Nice.
To have it in Bali, so we're going back there with all the fam to have fun there. That'll be. I feel sorry for a lot. Do you know the least traveled country in the world? The least traveled country in the world, in other words, where people travel less out of their place, out of their country to other countries in the world, is, no surprising, United States of America. They don't go anywhere.
They don't go. They don't leave.
No,
in North Korea. I think Jenk's right. North Korea is probably gonna win that one.
No, America, the United States is statistically the least traveled country in the world.
Really?
And when you see those vox pops of people being asked about the rest of the world, most Americans have zero idea about where anywhere else, because they've always been told that the only country in the world that ever mattered was America. And so they don't travel out. They never go anywhere. Americans, I mean, if someone in America, and lots of people do obviously, to go to somewhere like Bali, now that's not an easy thing from the States. It's a hell of a long way. From Australia, it's an hour and 20 minutes. And it's just, how long would it take to fly from Perth to Sydney? 5, just over 5 hours from Perth to Sydney. It's about an hour and a half less to Melbourne, and it's Leicester Adelaide. But why Perth?
Jenk's calling fake news on your stats about the US.
I didn't make them up.
It's because Jenk's in North Korea, so he knows how hard it is to travel out.
You are joking. You are joking, I take it.
Yeah. I don't think he wouldn't be allowed to stay on our podcast long enough on an IP address in North Korea, I don't think.
Well, he could be if he was in South Korea.
Yeah, very different.
North Korea. Hey, I'm calling fake news on that one, Rowie. I'm totally not biased. Mate, one thing you don't want to do, you don't want to get into an argument with an Aussie bloke about that kind of stuff, because it's not in your best interest. No, but that fair income, Jack, I'm quoting amazing sources. That's what I heard. If it's wrong, it's wrong. It could be totally wrong. But going on,
Facebook algorithm.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know, but apparently America is the least traveled country in the world, which wouldn't surprise me. Surely, I mean,
if you live in the place of Disney World, why would you travel? Why would you leave it? You wouldn't leave
exactly for that reason,
mate. I wouldn't leave Florida. I wouldn't leave Orlando. Maybe head over to LA to do the Disneyland and then go back over to do Disney World again. Happy days.
You know, we have our own Disney World in Australia, don't you?
What? Where?
In Queensland.
No, we don't.
Sure we do.
Mate, that is a poor man's Disney World. That's nothing.
No.
That's
it doesn't matter. I couldn't think of anything worse anyway. So it's something you got to have kids.
Oh, mate, next time we go, we're not taking the kids.
No?
No, it's too expensive to take the kids.
Had enough of them.
We haven't worked out how to tell them yet.
Just don't tell them. Just leave a note in the kitchen.
Mummy and Dad.
Hi, guys. There's 100 cans of food.
Yeah.
See when we get back. What are you going to do about it?
Initiation. If you're alive when we get back.
Jake, why are you asking how long does it take to fly from Perth to Sydney? What's your interest in that?
Because I said that's how big Australia was. It was about the same size as North America.
Right. Okay.
Which I also have numerous sources, but I can't cite them for confidentiality reasons.
I mean, all you got to do is Google this. All three of us have got Google in front of us. Has anyone actually Googled the least traveled city in the world, a country in the world?
I can't do two things at once. There's no way I can talk on this. And then also, that's why I never know what I'm talking about, because I make notes and things, but then I can't actually access them when I'm talking. So,
well, see, I write them all down, and then because I'm used to writing notes down as a radio announcer, that's what we do all the time. So it's actually one thing that I'm okay. Here we go. I'm going to find out. Can you hear the speed of my typing?
Cheng, I want to know if people from Perth have a different accent than people from Sydney. Not really from Sydney, probably from Queensland. Queenslanders have a bit of a unique accent.
Yeah.
Queenslanders.
Yeah, mate. No worries. No wuckers. Is the USA the least traveled country in the world? No. North Korea is. No, I'm joking. The USA is not one of the least traveled countries in the world. In fact, it's a major tourism destination. Piss off, with countries like Tuvalu and Kiribati being much less visited. Well, no kidding. They don't even exist.
Okay. Are you doing a new trip to Kiribati?
You what?
We do an annual trip to Kiribati.
Where is it? Are you serious?
We only do Turalui every 2 years or so.
You're so full of it, mate. Seriously. You know,
if you got it off Wikipedia, I reckon Jenk's gone on there and updated Wikipedia in the time before you looked it up.
Yeah, I don't. Okay, I'm going to find the person that told me that the States was the least traveled country in the world, and I'm going to have a word with them.
See, that's in Australia. We don't have actual sources. We've just got blokes that told us something once.
Yeah.
Rosie would get on the phone. Oi, Bazza, why are you bullshitting about that America stat?
Yeah. And
track him down.
What's your problem? I mean, when you get to my age, Jenk, you get the not inherited, but it's a fairly natural ability to exploit other people for your own purposes. Similar to Trump.
I like Jenk's latest.
Oh, hey, what's going on? That was weird.
Rowie, when presented with facts, piss off.
I lost everything. I lost screen. Where Rowie when presented with.
Mate, there's nothing more Aussie than that. I tell you what.
I still use Yahoo. Oh, well, there you go. And AOL, yeah, AOL, Modern Connection. Are you serious? Random questions. Okay.
Extra points if it's still dial-up.
Sorry?
Extra points if it's still a dial-up connection.
Oh, my God.
Remember
Surely
that?
Not.
Someone in the house would pick the phone up to make a call and everything would just be gone.
Get off. I'm on the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, get off. Hang up. I'm trying to talk to Honey Stella, for God's sake.
Classic.
That's pretty tough words from young Jenk there. Well, clearly he doesn't know who I am. Rowie, when presented with facts, piss off.
Just because that's exactly what you said when you found the facts.
Mate, you can put on an emoji with a tongue sticking out the side, but that's not going to get you off the hook, mate. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you, what's that?
That one.
I'll tell you an interesting fact, Jenk. I betcha I am older than your father. There
Father time.
I bet you any money in the world I'm older than your dad. I'm thousands of miles away from you, so I can take the piss out of you. Only until the point where we come face to face in a neutral country. Let's pick Sweden, whatever, Finland, Denmark.
There's no fighting here.
Thousands of miles away from you. 1,000, mate. I can't imagine how far away. My dad is 74. Okay, I'll shut up then. He beat me.
Rowie's 15 years older than your dad.
I vote Hawaii. Hawaii is not neutral. It's friggin' one of your stupid states.
Like Canada. Poor Canadians. Yeah. I love Canada. I'm spewing about that whole thing. They'll hold strong.
Oh, yeah. The only real... Well, the Canadians are Americans without guns. So the only problem they've got when it comes to America is they don't have any military might. But it's a big place.
Well, America's tried. A few hundred years ago, they tried to invade, and they were comprehensively defeated.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be an easy place to take over.
Well, size has never been an issue. Look at the might and size of Russia, and they couldn't can in what is it, 2 years that they've been there trying to stop or get it whatever they want from Ukraine. I mean, it's just.
I think they got a bit more fight than they expected.
Oh my God, but they're so undermanned and the artillery. It's just, I would have thought, from an ignorant point of view, that if Russia just launched an all-out total attack, maybe they didn't do that. Maybe they just sent in a small amount, thinking they could wrap this up in a matter of time. They had no idea that Ukraine were going to be still fighting 2 years later or whatever. They wouldn't have. That was. It's just, it's freaky. They are incredible people for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Wild. Oh. What's the time? 10:50. Geez, I was supposed to get off about 20 minutes ago, but it's been too much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't done it for ages, so it is. I'm glad we did it. It's good fun. It's what we need to do, and I need to talk to Rich about, is get a setup like we had with old mate Fenton, and actually be able to talk to Jenk on air, so that we don't have to wait for comments. We can just talk and actually don't have to worry about writing stuff down. So 10 more minutes, then I got to go. Are you off to work? Is that what you're doing?
He's off. He's on his way to Hawaii
via Korea.
Yeah. If he can leave North Korea.
Yeah.
He's got a parade on. That's where he's got to go to in 10 minutes.
A gay parade.
At work,
just chilling. I see you doing all this while you're at work. Oh, good on you. What's your boss's name? You might not know this guy, boss. He goes under the name of Jenk. He looks like another guy off TV, off TikTok and shit, but he's actually doing absolutely fuck all while he's at work.
And his boss will say, "What does he look like?" And you'll go, "Fuck." That's why.
That's right. He's actually an invisible troll. So
yeah.
Good luck with that.
Now that would be good actually, to have capacity to be able to speak with people. And
I don't know what's involved. Well, all we did to Fenton was to send him today's link, like as in Wednesday night's link, and he just dialed into it and joined us. So
yeah,
Jenk, if you're interested in doing that, although it's not going to serve your anonymity exactly how you'd like it, unless you want to wear a mask or
do it. Wear like one of those anonymous masks, like the hackers wear, and we can even get some voice changing stuff for you.
Hello. My name is Jenk. I know where you are. I'll come in and go, I don't know who you are, and I don't know what you want. If it's money you're after, I've not got any.
Unique set of skills.
What? Yes. What I do have is a unique set of skills that make me a whatever. I can't think of the word. I actually do that voiceover all the time, but I sound like shit tonight.
Mate, no, solid. Now that'd be good to get access. Maybe even get a couple of more people on the roster. So then if any of us are out, we can get a few more voices rotate through, so you're not on your lonesome. It's hard though.
Yeah.
You want to protect the dynamic because we're all amazing. It's hard to find amazing people.
My phone, my mic decided to check out. Still does that. I think it's dying a natural death. I think perhaps
or it's evolving.
Hey? Or
it's evolving.
Well, yeah, it has been really hard just to get regular. Yeah. I mean, it's literally a month, and we wouldn't have done it normally if it was just you and I, because Jace wasn't available and Suresh is not, and then Rich is off for the next 6 months. So I don't know. Well, maybe it evolves into talking about other stuff.
Yeah.
Like what people want to talk about, if it's American politics, if it's global politics, if it's AI, or maybe it doesn't have to be about belief at all. We evolve it into something else. Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, because even like alternative voices, even if you get like a fundamentalist pastor, or even more of a conservative type, like Christian, that'd be an interesting conversation. Or people on different sides of the political spectrum, or get a Trump supporter on.
Oh, look, I'm happy to.
You know what I mean? Like that sort of stuff would be interesting.
Absolutely, I'm happy to. I'm not going to back away from people like that, and that's what's happened in when I set up this podcast. It was going to be, I've got one thing, guys, and that is I want evidence. If you haven't got evidence, shut the fuck up or come up with something. And it developed out of that into something more amicable, to the point where it's like, I might as well have a bunch of atheists on here, let alone trying to talk to you and Rich. It's like, so we need some people who are more diametrically opposed, as opposed to just being more like-minded. That's but it's enjoyable to do that and not have the hassles and fights and drama stuff. But maybe we need a bit of spice, or just talking to people so we can actually talk and be audible, as opposed to just writing shit down.
I think both. I reckon a combination of both of those would be a good injection. Have it like the capacity for a call-in type setup would be good. But then also, and it didn't have to be a different voice every week. So you could still have all of us guys as sort of the regulars, but then interspersed with, these other like different voices. So it's not just a shit fight every week, but also it's different. And it's easier for you because you've got a bigger pool then to draw from. As well, because it's hard. Life's unpredictable with young kids, and obviously Rich with his PhD, and Jace doing science experiments, blowing himself up, and we love you, Jace, crazy man. But so I don't think it's dying. I think it's just evolving.
It would be a shame to and I'm only thinking purely about from my perspective. It's still frustrating because I still don't know to the actual day who's available. And that makes it really hard, because I like to start working on it Tuesday, to come up with a subject, to do research, to put it all together, to write out all of the intro, which is generally about 2 or 3 pages, and so have some idea, and then work out who's going to be available. And I go through all that often, and then find out that no one's actually available, so then it gets moved. So it's really frustrating, and the more work I'm doing, of course, the less time I've got to put into it. So
I can imagine.
But it is, but we've all got our busy lives. Having whinged about not having all the time it takes, I'm also the person who has the most time up their sleeve, being retired. I understand how difficult it is for everyone else to try and fit it in. And we've still yet to this day had one single solitary female on the show since
we've got to change that.
Over a year ago. And I've given up contacting Eva's frames, because she just she's too much of a superstar to have time to spend to us now. And
she's probably just intimidated by our celebrity status.
Yeah,
definitely that.
Yeah. Well, I understand that.
We all are. I like Jenk's suggestion. Get Mel Gibson. He's an Aussie and a Trump supporter. We'll get it.
I think Yanks think that Mel Gibson is hopping around the street with all the kangaroos that we have in our streets. Read a Panahi? Who the fuck's that?
This Rita.
Rita Panahi. Do we know who that is? And why are you suggesting her, Jen? I'd love to have Mel Gibson. That would be freaking insane. But you got absolutely zero chance of getting him on a podcast run by a couple of Aussie rat bags who he doesn't care about.
Who knows?
But the idea of talking, is that the chick that was on? Is she Sky News? That's not the chick that I showed the audio of, was it?
I'll Google.
Sky News commentator.
Oh yeah,
It is.
Australian. No, it's not. Australian conservative political commentator and columnist of Iranian descent.
I see an Indian-looking woman. If that's her on Sky News, she is. Let me have a quick look. I reckon that's probably her. She is a right-wing nutbag.
Yeah, get her on.
What's her name? Rita
Punani.
Panahi. Panahi.
That's your homework.
Oh, that's her. Yeah,
Rita
that's
Panahi.
her. I cannot stand her. She has about 5 guests on. They're all the equivalent of, they're all Trump. So she would be great. But again, there's no way of getting someone like that on a podcast like this. I would lose my shit because she's just, yeah.
It'd be entertaining.
She's obnoxious. Sky News commentator, that was Anna Kasparian. Who the fuck's that?
Karanova.
Kasparian, Anna. Who was Anna Kasparian? The woman on
your
was
video.
raping? Oh, okay. Yeah,
Well, that's
cool.
your homework, Rowie. Just if you get all of them teed up, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But I need to call it. But I'll be in for next week. If
Jenk, if you want to make some money, because these guys do fuck all for the amount of money I pay them. So if you want some real coin, I'm happy to put you in and get rid of these guys.
It's serious bread too. It's a cushy gig. You only have to come on once every 8 weeks or so.
That's it. That's hilarious, mate. They pay me for the joy of being on my podcast. That's the difference we're talking about right here. All right, gents, I got to go. Either of you on Twitter? Yes, I am. You are, aren't you?
No, I'm not on Twitter.
Okay.
Or Instagram. I'm on Facebook, which I'm told is an old person's.
It is an old
media now.
person. I'm pretty sure I got on Twitter recently, although I don't use it often, but I'm on it. But yeah, you can contact us both on Facebook, mate. I know you're young generation. I know Facebook is something that you probably haven't even heard of before, but just pay me in Tim Tams, mate.
Good taste.
We don't have Tim Tams, so you got no chance of getting hold of them. We can buy them, but they're fattening and expensive. In case you didn't notice, Luke and I are a couple of slim, well-built, muscular, hot guys.
You don't get this with Tim Tams, mate.
No.
Only peanut M&Ms and wine.
Your profile picture, Jenky's getting a little bit porky, so I'd be careful about that if I were you. But yeah, Tim Tams are the bees knees, mate. They are.
If Jen gets Tim Tams, the rest of the panel, the rest of us on salary, there's going to be uproar. Because none of us got bloody Tim Tams in our contract. I'm telling you right, this Tim Tam gate is going to be scandalous.
Well, I think what Jeng probably should be doing in order to get his way into this incredibly auspicious podcast is actually pay his way in with Tim Tams for us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because this motherfucker's not getting on this show for nothing. That's the fact, Jack.
I see you've been reading Trump's book, The Art of the Deal. You've just judoed this whole thing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden now Jenk's paying Tim Tam. He doesn't know what's happened.
Yeah. And that's the way we like it. It's been fun to see you on the
He's like,
good
just
on
let
you,
me
Jake.
go.
Appreciate it. Love your work, mate. Talk to you soon. Have a good week. Cheers.
Yeah, mate. I got to shoot as well, Rowie.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. Look, I think we shall wrap it up right now and return by the sounds of things. So we know we got Jink. We just need an interesting subject. Which, by the way, if you are listening, if there's anyone out there, I'm sure there's just not one person on this entire planet who's actually tuned into us, because if that's the case, that is very, very sad. But if you've got an idea.
Your mic, Rowie. Lost you. Lost your mic.
Yeah, it's been doing that all night, and you goes right down. I can't hear you. What was I saying?
If you got an idea.
Yeah, love to hear something that you'd like us to discuss. It can be anything at all. Up until now, it's been really about belief, which covers a multitude of topics. But if you've got something that you think would be interesting, let us know, and you can do that next week, or you can find us both on Facebook and send us a PM if you want, private message. Otherwise, did we get a message from Jenk as far as chatting with him live next week?
He said he will. He'll think about it. Not sure. We'll see.
Okay,
especially if he's at work.
We need an email address so we can send him through the link. Yeah, so maybe that's the path we'll try and go down, to just add a bit of zing to it. Because it's 11 o'clock now, we're still not getting an increase in people who are well and truly up and into their day in America. So yeah, so actually I might, if you want to sign off, mate, go for it. I'm going to just hang around a little bit longer and see if I can't get some more callers coming in, although it's not likely. Seems Jenk's the only one we've had the entire night, but that does change after 11 o'clock. More callers coming. Yeah. Well, it did. So, yeah, mate. So if you want to disappear, I shall hang around. Thanks, Luke. Love your work.
Thank you. It's been fun.
But yeah, we'll talk during the week and hopefully catch up next Wednesday.
Done. Enjoy.
Good on you, mate. Good on you. Cheers, Luke.
Brother.
See you, mate.
See you, everyone.
That's it. And then there were one. Yeah. So Luke, hopefully back next Wednesday. I'm just going to have a quick break and I shall be back. And if there's anyone there who wants to dial in and have a chat about anything at all whatsoever, please feel free to do so. I'd love to hear from you. Comments about Pascal's wager we've been talking about tonight. Also, just a whole bunch of stuff we're happy to talk about. So, yeah, I'll be back in a sec, and we'll see if there's anyone there. And we can continue on. If not, I'll wrap it up. But hopefully, there's someone there when I come back. Just give us 5 minutes. So hi, I am back. If you've just tuned in and you have no idea what you've come across, my name's Peter Rowe. I'm broadcasting from a little place called Perth, which is one of the most isolated cities in the world in Western Australia. Currently about 11:15 on Wednesday night, the 26th of March. Just wrapped up our podcast, which was our podcast on every Wednesday night is an atheist, a believer, and a pastor walk into a bar, born out of a bunch of guys coming together who were a combination of believers and atheists. And so we've had some very interesting discussions over the last year or so. It's been fabulous, nice bunch of regular listeners, most of which have disappeared for tonight, so which I will wrap up shortly if there's no response and there's no one listening or want to be involved in talking about anything. We've been talking a lot about American politics tonight because one of our main callers, Jenk, is from the States. And so he's one of our connections, as well as another guy called Fenton from Los Angeles and a whole bunch of other people. Tricky to get to talk to a lot of people because the time difference between the kind of people who are likely to listen to this podcast, which is generally throughout the States, very different time difference between Australia and America. And even within Australia, we have a 3-hour time difference thanks to a thing called daylight saving, which we're talking about before. We won't talk about it now. So if you've just sort of jumped on and seen this podcast and want to have a chat, by all means, please, anything at all. I'm a musician. I'm a radio announcer. I've been a mechanic back in the day. I play guitar. I write songs. I sing. I was a Christian for 25 years. I'm not anymore. I don't call myself an atheist because I don't like to label myself. I don't believe in Santa, but I don't have a name for that. I don't believe in leprechauns. I don't have a name for that either. And I don't need a name for the fact that I don't believe in God, although, as I said, I did for 25 years. So I gave it a fair old nudge, and it's an interesting story if you want to hear about it or talk about it, or you've got a similar story to mine. Been listening a lot to Eve Was Framed about her abuse that she cops, particularly in America. We don't. Just realised my mic had gone off again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. But the amount of abuse she cops from people who call themselves Christians because she doesn't fit into their preconceived idea about what she should be like. And if you turn your back on God and become an atheist in America, then to them it's fair game to abuse them. If you're one of those people who abuses her, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear you substantiate what it is that you're doing and why you feel that somehow you are so special that it's your right to abuse someone who doesn't agree with you. I find many things offensive about America, but that does not happen in Australia. After 25 years of being a Christian, I had one person who found it difficult to cope with the fact that I was no longer. 25 years. Okay. That's not an overnight thing. Sorry, I'm just hearing some weird sounds in my roof. I'm just wondering exactly what it could be. I think I know what it is. We've got a new cat, probably wants to get out of the room. Yeah, we're pretty cruisy and laid back in Australia. We don't tend to attack people. Well, racism issues people do, but when it comes to religion, we're pretty chilled about it. If you don't want to believe in God, and I do, then we kind of accept that as it is. But many people in America don't, and they become quite abusive and nasty. And that's just the way it is. There's not much we can do about that. So anyway, look, if you want to join in, I'm going to sign off shortly. As I mentioned before, it's 11:19, Wednesday, 26th of March. It's PM, not AM. And it's a podcast called An Atheist, a Believer, and a Pastor Walk into a Bar. And we talk about all sorts of things, and we'd love to talk to you. If, however, you don't want to, that's fine. I don't mind even talking about stuff if you don't want to talk back. I just need to know that somebody is there listening. Otherwise, I'm literally talking to myself. And having been a radio announcer for 40 years, the last thing I get a thrill out of is hearing my voice. So if you want to be a part of it and you want to join in, just stick your name. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a little window on the right-hand side, which allows you to put comments on. You'll see comments which started at 8 o'clock Australian Western Standard Time with Jeng, and he's been with us the entire night. And it's such it varies so much, this podcast. One, I don't know, it was 3 months ago, I stayed up till after midnight just seeing what would happen if there was a different audience out there. And I had over 700 comments, not from all the same person either. It was extraordinary. 700 comments. And then tried it again the following week, stayed up till midnight, and there was 3 people. So I don't understand why. I understand the time difference between Australia and America is significant. So as I mentioned before, it's 11:20 here, so that would probably be maybe about 10 o'clock, depending whereabouts in America you are. There's a massive time difference. I understand that as well, as there is in Australia. Big countries. So yeah, nothing coming through. I think it's probably time to wrap it up. I'm more than happy to talk about stuff if I know people are listening, but if they're not, then yes, I am retired. But that doesn't mean that I've just got all the time in the world just to sit and talk about myself. So let's wrap it up. Hopefully you can tune in next Wednesday, which will be, the date will be the 26th. It'll be the 2nd of April. Wow. March disappeared in the blink of an eye. So we're into April next Wednesday, April the 2nd at 8 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time. We will have Luke. Hopefully we'll have Jace back. Possibly Suresh. We'll find something interesting to talk about. Either way, thanks for your company tonight. Really appreciate it. It's An Atheist, a Believer, and a Pastor Walk into a Bar. My name's Peter Rowe. Look forward to catching up with you next Wednesday. Have a terrific and safe Wednesday and Thursday, and of course the rest of the week, and have a ripper weekend. So we'll catch you soon. Thanks a lot. Cheers. Appreciate it.